Chapter 581 Stealing Chicken Will Not Lose Rice. That's the retreat signal. Why? There was once a mountain on the back of the island Tortoise, and the mechanical castle stood here. But now, the mountain has been razed to the ground, and it is almost the same as the sea level. Not only the ground has been smashed, but also the shell of the island turtle. Therefore, the island tortoise at this moment has already completely died, but it is only temporarily floating on the sea by relying on its huge size. However, even so, the giant of sand with eyes all over his body still stands in front of Guy Duo. No matter how many times it is broken up. No matter what big moves Guy uses. The giant of sand was still so strong, condensed from the green sand in the sky again and again, and stood in front of Guy Duo again and again. This is the first time that Guy has met such a difficult opponent. Whether it is domineering or any other move, the attack effect will be eaten by the opponent, but it will not fall. Compared to attacking, even if the opponent can unload some of his strength, Guy has an absolute advantage. Compared to defense, no matter how the sand giants attack, they can't even leave a trace on Guy Duo. But because of this, Guy was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. Because compared to physical strength, the undead have no physical strength at all. Can't find where K-Roctal really hides. The sand giant is a monster that will never fall. Looking at this devastated turtle island, you can see how much effort Guy has put in, but it's all useless. Once again, the sand giant stood firm and opened his mouth, revealing the gloomy old face of Crocodar. He raised his head and glanced at the fireworks exploding in the sky, grinning. If you guessed correctly, Lord Loya is coming back. Look, Blackbeard has escaped. He won't come back. You die. Guy looked indifferent, unmoved by K-Roctal's psychological tactics. However, having said that, the Yuhi-colored fireworks do represent an accident, and it is not advisable to stay here for a long time. Thinking of this, Guy's fists wrapped the strong armament hockey again, and even the space screamed under that powerful force. A trace of cracks suddenly appeared in the atmosphere, proving how terrifying the power of this move is. However, it seems that our goal has been achieved. Although it's a pity that we didn't have the opportunity to completely destroy the island, if we use this trick. It's enough. Oh, don't you have a purpose? Rockdale frowned, feeling as if he had overlooked something. At this moment, Guy roared more, raised his fist, and slammed it forward. Click, click. Dong 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 dong. The atmosphere between the two was instantly filled with cracks, and a dense drum-like vibration hit K-Roctal's heart. Shock. How is that possible? Isn't this Whitebeard's ability? Suddenly, he carefully looked at the position of Guy's fists, and the grains of deep black matter quickly formed a line, which made K-Roctal take a deep breath. No. That's shattered space. Bang. At this moment, a terrifying fist wind swept the audience instantly. It's not like a gust of wind blowing out, but the entire space is repelling the things inside. The powerful squeezing force pressed on K-Roctal, and even if it was an undead, he had the illusion that he was about to die at the moment. This is what I prepared for Whitebeard. I didn't expect it to be used in Ice Dragon, Loya twice. So, suffer to death. Guy roared a lot, his whole body was shocked, and he stepped out, and that huge force stepped on the entire turtle island into the sea. The seawater surged up into the sky, like a cage with no way out, wrapping Turtle Island in it. Empty. Fist. Boom, boom. After one punch, the entire Turtle Island is divided into two. The two corpses of the island turtle floated on the sea, proving the horror of this attack. The rolled-up waves are as high as 100 meters and spread out endlessly. Bang. In the misty sky, Guy mostly landed on the undulating warship from the sky, stepping on the deck to stand firm. Looking at Titch not far away, Guy asked more, "What do I want? Don't say you didn't get it. Is this the time to say this? Lao Su's crew is dead." Nani? Guy ignored Tiki's outburst and said in surprise, "How could there possibly exist on that island that can compete with you? Could it be that the Ice Dragon, Loya is really back. No. If he's already back, how could he not come out and stop me? It's not that guy. Titch sat on the deck, looked at the bruised subordinates around him, bit Kiba and said, it's a blood lord, named Ulysses, the new commander of the undead army. It's the commander again. Humph. Hearing this title, Guy remembered the suffocation when he fought with K. Rockville before. He snorted immediately, but suddenly, he remembered something and took a deep breath. Didn't the other great commander follow Loya to Elbaf? Why did he appear here? Speaking of this, Ticky's face was ruthless. Ah, I'm thinking about this too. A guy with that kind of strength, the Navy doesn't even know about it. How is it possible? Then, he looked up in the direction of Mary Joa. His eyes were very cold. I guess from the beginning, this is a bureau against you and me. The Navy wants to rely on us to steal the historical text, and then control the historical text, and then borrow Luoya's hand will take us out. They kept us all in the dark. Loya, you, and I have all become their pawns. Just as he was about to say something, the crew member left behind on the boat suddenly rushed over with a phone bug in his hand, and handed the phone bug to Guy Duo in a frightened manner. Guy, many guys, sir, I have your emergency contact. What's the matter? Grabbing the phone bug and looking at the familiar face, Guy asked in a deep voice, Zhu Wei, what happened? Our fleet was attacked by the Ice Dragon, Loya. Except for Jin who escaped with Betsy's ability, the rest of the army was wiped out. What? Guy is like an enraged beast, staring at his eyes. When did it happen? How much is left in the fleet? How did they find Jin? Just an hour after your attack started, the fleet hidden in the island-eating monster was discovered by Loya, and then he was fished out of the sea. Speaking of which, Zhu Wei said in a deep voice, this time our losses are no less than Loya. Stop all activities, and hurry back. We should have been calculated. Ah, I see. Guy didn't hang up the phone, he just crushed the phone bug into flesh. Looking at the corpse that had good strength before his death, Guy Duo said to Titch, my fleet was wiped out. Your situation is similar. I guess they want to uproot our forces. Let's start, and finally kill people. Quote. Even if we didn't kill us, destroying your fleet and my capable men would be a heavy blow to you and me. And this time you smashed Turtle Island, and the loss to Loya was not small. Quote. Tiki continued with what Guy had said, and said coldly, Navy, it's really a good calculus. Chapter 582 Turtle Island's Secret. The speed of the naval warships should not be underestimated, and the sporadic rain of guns did not cause much damage to the warships that Guy and the others were riding on. After the enemy disappeared without a trace, Ulysses fished out K. Rockville, who was also broken in two, from the sea. While linking him back together with the magic of the great sword of the undead, Ulysses twitched the corners of his mouth and asked, didn't you clamor to fight the 4 emperors for 300 rounds? Now there are 300 rounds, but it doesn't seem to be of much use. Shut up, bastard. K. Rockdale stared at him with a bad expression. Why are you here? Since you are here, you could have prevented Turtle Island from being destroyed. The two corpses of the island turtle are not far apart. The huge corpse represents the huge internal organs, attracting a large group of sea beasts and sea kings to compete for food here. Seeing the island tortoise shattered, K. Rockville, who was in charge of staying behind, bit Kiba and said, this is the foundation of Lord Loya. Do you know what you are doing? Of course I know. In fact, this is Lord Loya's plan. Ulysses was not panicked at all by K. Rockdale's questioning, and pointed with a smile, look, isn't the place where Turtle Island breaks familiar? Rockdale looked up and saw a large piece of dark wall on the opposite half of the Turtle Island. The magic lines shining on it were very familiar to him. That's the crown of the king. The bottom layer is actually in the belly of the island turtle. Isn't the island turtle still alive? Could it be? You and I can destroy an island, not to mention that there are more powerful enemies in this world. Ulysses saw that K. Rockville's severed limb had healed, and put away the undead. Great sword, sitting beside him. Reaching out and pulling out, dragged out a whole set of tea sets, lit the fire and boiled water skillfully to prepare UHT. Since all islands made of soil are like this, wouldn't the island turtles, as living creatures, be more easily destroyed? While cooking UHT, Ulysses said, so the island turtle was transformed by Lord Roha using undead magic a long time ago. Except for the head and some of its irreplaceable internal organs, the rest are undead talents. Some bodies. And, as one of the Grand Commanders, I have to question your professionalism. What did you say? Didn't you find that all the buildings on Turtle Island have obvious divisions? I'm not talking about the division of categories, but the division of the size of each part. Wait, don't tell me. Recalling the area where he was stationed, K. Rockdale's eyes widened. Is that the one? Ulysses smiled confidently. Turtle Island is not only a movable island, but also an island that can be split into 12 small islands and 7 emergency escape parts. The mechanical island. Only me and Lord Roha know about this. Just like the addition of the last part of the crown of the king, it was the transformation that I and Lord Roya made together. So it's not surprising that you don't know, after all. Who told me to be so much better than you? K. Rockdale was speechless for a while, then bit Kiba and said. You wait. One day, I will make the undead army have only one Grand Commander. Then come on, Senior K. Rockdale. By the way, the Master is very satisfied with you being able to fight that monster-like guy for so long. It's obviously a compliment, but Kiba's irritated Rockdale tickles. After boiling water and making UHT, Ulysses stood up and raised his finger to make a mark on the sea. Then, under the ghostly appearance of the dead man, K. Rockdale, the island tortoise, which was broken in two, slowly swam and stitched itself together. There is still damage, but fortunately, Lord Loya has already used the funds to build the dragon boat, and the defense facilities of Turtle Island itself are not so expensive. Boom! The earth trembled frantically like an earthquake. At the interface of the cracks, the muscles and carapace inside turned into a sticky black substance, and they were automatically glued together as soon as they were attached. Looking at the mountain that was cut in half, Ulysses said distressed-edly, it's a pity that the giant dragon roar cannon. I don't know if it can be rebuilt. If it weren't for the cracks on the rocks still remaining when the island broke before, I would never have imagined that K. Rockdale would have been killed. Such a terrible thing happened here before. Suddenly, a stubby tail emerged from under the sea, and the outer layer was wrapped in clumps of seabed silt. Under K. Rockdale's gaze, the crack of the tail was pushed open in the shape of a door, and guys with weak combat capabilities such as Simon and Geisa came out one after another. If K. Rockdale read it right, it was the escape device that he asked Simon and others to hurry to evacuate. From the inside, it was just a circular shelter that could sink to the bottom of the sea and wait for the war to subside. But who would have thought that this was actually transformed from the tail of the island turtle? Speaking of which, you don't know yet, do you? Ulysses suddenly turned his head and said, before I became the Blood Earl, my family was also a family that lived by researching machinery. It looks like I can only live with some money. But I am the only true descendant of the Ulysses school of organ art that has been lost for 200 years. The corners of K. Rockdale's mouth twitched, and he rolled the eyes of the dead fish. Well, you are amazing. At this time, K. Rockdale also understood that, as undead, they could not hide any information from the Master of Loya. The life that Ulysses can remember must have been known to Akatsuki by Roha at the first time like him, and then it has been hidden by Roha as a trump card. It is no wonder that his own ability is better. It is suitable for staying on Turtle Island, but it is more time to go out to perform tasks. After all, apart from this group of undead who were resurrected by himself, there is really no one in this world worthy of Loya's trust. New World, on the way to Elbath. Recalling the scene where Loya was transformed into a dragon yesterday, he picked up the island eater from the bottom of the sea with one claw, and then shook out the enemies one by one from the big goldfish's mouth. Robin shivered with lingering fears. By the way, how do you know they have been following our boat? The water here is as deep as 1,000 meters, and even Loya can't hear the movement of the sea floor, right? Actually, I didn't find out at first, I was just watching out for them at any time. The rich man was lying on the lap of the maid Robin, enjoying Robin's peeled oranges. Knowing that they would be so stupid to stay right under us. Goldfish's blood stinks, not to mention such a big one. I can't see or hear, but I can smell it. If it's near the battlefield, it's understandable to smell the smell in the sea area of the sea, but it's been a day, how can you still smell it? After a pause, Loya rolled the eyes of the dead fish and said, I think they are insulting my IQ, please hug. Snapped. A slap slapped Loya's head, and Robin took out a tissue to wipe his hands, and then continued to peel the oranges lightly. Thank Shanks, if it weren't for him a sword cut such a big gap in the face of the island eater, so that Jin and the others could not find a way to stop the bleeding. It is estimated that we are really going to be attacked by them. Yeah, but I have a chance to say. Lazily stretched and wiped the pulp on his face, Loya twisted his waist and turned over like a salted fish. I just want to go to Elbaf to find Saren's family to participate. Our wedding, look at the trouble. Turtle Island will need a lot of money to rebuild, even if Anilu and the others come back. What? Have an opinion? No, not at all. In the first half of the New World, in a corner of the ice field left by Loya, dozens of naval soldiers are lighting fires on the ice field to keep warm. The leading Major General took off the binoculars and took a sip of the boiled water handed over by his subordinates, feeling a lot warmer. Hey, I haven't come back yet. What if I miss the time? Don't worry, Major General, those are the 4 emperors Guy Duo and Blackbeard Tiki. With their help, it's not a simple matter to solve a Turtle Island. Well, that's what I said. The Major General nodded with satisfaction, and then said, after the handover of the warships is over, we will rest in ships and move forward at full speed, so as to get back the time. It is about Marshal Sengoku's plan, and no one can be sloppy. Did you hear it clearly? Yes. At this moment, a negative voice sounded from behind them. Time, you don't need that kind of thing. Who? But at this moment, endless darkness has enveloped them. Chapter 583 Divert Firepower. Ice Dragon, Loya has made big news again. This news is only a short day, and once again detonated the sea. But unlike the past, this time, it was not that he took the initiative to do things, but that someone went to trouble him. There are many, 4 emperors, guys, one of whom became the target of thousands of people after Loya defected from the navy. The 4 emperors. After all, everyone has understood since that day that the real situation is not as the navy preached, and Guy Duo was hit hard by Aokiji and Kyabu. In fact, it wasn't the 2 known generals who hit Guy the most at that time, but the lieutenant general of the headquarters, Ice Dragon, Loya, who seemed to be making up the numbers. This time, it was Guy who wanted to take revenge. Taking advantage of the day when Loya was not on Turtle Island, he stormed Turtle Island and destroyed more than half of it. Let it be a huge loss. After all, you see, the entire Turtle Island is about to be leveled. How can there be a gloomy feeling of dense forest before? If you don't read the report, the ghost knows that this large piece of flat land was once the spooky Turtle Island. Immediately, Alien Jones, a cadre stationed in the Chambord Islands under Loya's banner, found the Chambord newspaper and issued a statement. Guy Duo, Marshal Teach, the master asked me to give you a word. Facing thousands of reporters from all walks of life, under the gaze of countless ordinary people in the Navy, Jones was dressed in a suit and confident. Giving a speech. Hearing this, the rest of the people swallowed nervously, feeling that there would be a big news next. Is Loya going to war against the above 2? If you want to go to war, who will you fight first? How will the Navy react? At this moment, the eyes of countless people were focused on Jones' resolute face on the live broadcast screen, waiting for his speech. Then, Jones cleared his throat, and to try the scales. Then, holding the microphone, Jones sang this sentence. Eat mine and spit it out for me, take mine and send it back to me. Every time I guess, hey, hey, hey. The whole world is silent. And then, poof. What is this? Funny. If so, we say you did it." After singing this sentence, Jones glanced at the reporters and audience who were laughing in the audience, and walked away indignantly with a dark face. "A bunch of guys who don't know how to appreciate it. Lao Tzu's singing is so wonderful. However, it is a little funny, but the information revealed in it is suffocating for a while. Eat mine and spit it out for me, take mine and send it back to me." Does this mean that Guido and the recently famous Blackbeard managed to take something from Turtle Island? That's why Loya asked Jones to make a statement. As long as they return that thing, there is still room for things to turn around. And in Loya's collection, if there is something very important, the historical text of the road sign taken from the Four Emperors, Big Mom. Immediately, the entire sea started to act, searching for traces of Blackbeard and Guy Duo, and even the Navy was no exception, dispatching a large number of warships, trying to find the Chihuahai who lost contact just after the name was confirmed. All of a sudden, the eyes of countless people turned to Guy Duo and Blackbeard who were missing, trying to snatch away the pair of treasures and road signs that symbolize the entire era of the great pirates. It's not that no one suspects that Loya's move is a trick, but compared to Loya, Guy and a little-known Blackbeard are undoubtedly easier to deal with. Moreover, after the other party successfully attacked Turtle Island, he really disappeared. Loya did not appear on Turtle Island at the time, so the two managed to escape. But alive, but missing a trace, the taste here is intriguing. Is it pure fear of revenge and hid? Or, really hiding something? Many people want to know the answer to this question. All in all, now everyone is looking for the traces of Guy and Blackbeard, which has one precious time to rebuild the ruined Turtle Island. Deep in the New World, on an unknown island, the magnetic field in this sea area is very chaotic, and in the New World it is absolutely dangerous. Even if there is a recording pointer, one will get lost in the depths of the ocean if one is not careful. So even the Navy knows very little about it. At this moment, on this island, the remaining forces of Blackbeard and Guy's remaining forces are gathered. Yes, the remaining forces. Because whether it's Titch or Guy, almost all of them have become their commanders at the moment. Titch is a little better. Now he has just established the Blackbeard pirates, and except for a few cadres, he does not have much power. But Guy is so different. A whole set of plans was disrupted, and the invincible fleet created by man-made devil fruits traded at a huge cost was dug out from the bottom of the sea by Loya and swept them all in one go. In terms of losses, Guy's actions are not much less than Loya's. However, it's all worth it. Looking at the two huge Yuhi-colored stones in front of him, Guy was breathing heavily. This is the historical text of the road sign. This is the key to becoming one piece. That's right, it's beautiful, isn't it? Tiki also looked at the red stone in front of him with an obsessive face, and almost rushed to hug. No amount of planning is as good as a momentary reality. This is the first time he has been so close to his dream since he wasted most of his life. However, we can't understand what is recorded above. The previous plan failed, and Nicole Robin is still staying by Loya's side. Van Oka said worriedly, "Now everyone has guessed the historical text is in our hands, if we plan again." Yes, their previous series of actions were actually just to kidnap Nicole Robin. Because she is not only Loya's lover, but also the only known existence who can understand the text of history. As long as she is under control, the army of the undead. Historical text. All will be their booty. But the plan failed. Loya didn't go back, and after Turtle Island was beaten in two, he backhandedly destroyed Guy's fleet. If it wasn't for the red stone really placed in front of them, there would be no consideration of whether it was worth it or not, it would simply be a loss to the Grandma's house. Those need to be planned slowly, the most important thing now is. Zhu Wei played with the cane in his hand and smiled slightly. I'm sure no one will stand in front of Mr. Guy and prevent him from becoming the Pirate King. Boom. The thin door of the cave was pushed open, and one by one, fully armed pirates poured into the room. At the end of the crowd, Flood Disaster, Jinen, Insect Disaster, Betsy, who were hunched over, blocked the exit of the gate to prevent anyone from escaping from it. The situation on the field is on the verge of breaking out, and the murderous intention is gradually rising. However, Titch seemed to have expected it long ago, and didn't seem to panic at all. PFF ha ha ha. Too many guys. Is this your attitude towards your allies? A mass of darkness appeared in Titch's palm, and suddenly, Jin and Betsy outside the door looked ugly, as if they were resisting something. How do you think Lao Su sent Fire Fist Ace to prison? This is all the power given to me by the dark fruit. Do you want to bet? Bet before you kill Lao Su. I can't kill everyone here except you. Guy, who was not far away, watched the scene in front of him calmly, and after a long time, he said, "Stop it, Zue, you are not his opponent." Many guys. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I said, "Stop." The terrifying roar echoed in the cave, and the weak pirates instantly fainted on the spot. That's Conqueror's Haki, the absolute overbearing from the four emperors. Staring blankly at the familiar and unfamiliar Guy duo in front of him, Zue nodded and lowered the brim of his hat. Got it, Captain Guy. Chapter 584 Elbaf Warrior Village. The Navy Headquarters, the office of Admiral Aokiji. There were several plates of snacks in front of the two of them, and 2 bottles of sake were placed on the table. Holding up the wine glass, Aokiji said respectfully to the old man in front of him, "This time, thank you very much, Mr. Gian." "There's no need to thank me, after all," Teacher Zephyr said that. "This old man is so old that he wants to bet this time." Still in the washed, whitish and patched military uniform of the major, Guy-en watched Aokiji quietly, not taking the glass of wine. Aokiji didn't care either, poured the wine into his mouth alone, and then silently picked up the side dish and chewed it. After a moment of silence, Guy continued, "Ain is a good boy, I don't want her to see too many dark things. Everything I do is just for her. I understand, I will keep her away from the war and live happily with Teacher Zephyr. It's just." Having said that, Aokiji put down his wine glass, frowned and thought, "Marshal Sengoku should soon find out the tricks. I can keep myself safe, but you should be arrested, right? Have you figured out a plan to escape?" "Why think about those things?" Guy was holding a big cigarette pouch and said indifferently, "With the strength of the Weston family, as long as it is not a judgment from the world government, my old life can be saved. As long as I am still alive, I have hope until the end appears." That day. Suddenly, Guy's face was covered with a kind smile, his eyes lost focus, and he was recalling something. "After all, I promised Ai-yin that I would be an elder on the day she gets married." Really, children these days are so precocious. Yeah, a lot of ideas. Guy-un silently exhaled a ring of smoke. The next day, Guy-en was arrested by Sengoku himself for the felony of divulging the naval battle plan and imprisoned in the underground prison of the Navy headquarters. In the eyes of the soldiers who didn't know the details, this punishment was not heavy, it was even easy. You must know that this is a felony of leaking a battle plan. There is no problem with direct execution on the spot. However, considering Guy's reputation in the Navy and the power of the Weston family behind him, the rest of the people understood something. However, the disturbance of the outside world has nothing to do with Guy-en, whether it is conspiracy or wanton abuse, he takes it calmly. Years or decades, he had already prepared himself mentally, waiting for the dawn to come. In the single-person cell at the bottom of the prison, sitting on a cold slate bed, Guy took out a card from his arms and called the soldier left at the passage. "I heard that this is the VIP card here. Is it true?" "Ah, I see. Thank you Mr. Guy for me. I said it a long time ago, and he wants to thank you. You let him see the hope of writing the name of the family now." Qingzi held the microphone between his shoulders and face, while he was on the document he sent. Signed and asked, "How about the loss of Turtle Island, will it affect our follow-up plan?" The Dragon ship sank a dozen ships, half of the defense measures were damaged, and it was barely within expectations. When it came to this, Loya was also speechless. Guy actually used such a dangerous move on Turtle Island, which was beyond his calculations. If it is just a simple blow, relying on the characteristics of Turtle Island that can be separated, it will be fooled by pretending. But facing the powerful move called Draining Fist, Ulysses didn't have time to respond. The final separation of Turtle Island was not an initiative, but the link point was shattered by Guy's extra punch, and it had to be divided into two parts. Back in Alabasta, if Guy hadn't focused more on Aokiji and Kizaru, and only aimed at himself, he would have been beaten to death by one punch. Just thinking about it makes me terrified. The only thing fortunate is that the place where Guy Duo and Kay Rockville fought happened to be on the largest split zone of Turtle Island, and it broke directly into two pieces. If you change positions, Loya will definitely feel distressed. Then the next unlucky person is Anilu. The golden ship he drove back will be used by Loya shamelessly to repair Turtle Island. It seems that there is enough gold left to make a golden motto. That's good, otherwise your kid will definitely deceive me. Aokiji breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this conclusion. Am I that shameless? What do you think? Well, you won. Loya had nothing to say about this. Speaking of which, are you sure they won't find any problems with the historical text? You must know that apart from Nicole Robin, there really are other guys in the world who understand the historical text. Aokiji just picked up one information. Look at the name on it. Mephisto middle, _ Guy Duo and Blackbeard are not stupid. After this incident, they will no longer have contact with those people. With a smile on the corner of Loya's mouth, he pointedly said, the so-called people die for wealth, birds die for food. Although Guy Duo didn't fight with Blackbeard, I planted this seed for them. For those heroes, who else can they trust except themselves? I hope so. By the way, you have been staying at the Navy headquarters recently, don't move around. Loya said before hanging up the phone. Aokiji's hand froze in midair, unable to put it down for a long time. After a week of peaceful sailing, the Navy, Loya and others finally came to the world's most powerful country, the Giants, and the Elbaf warrior village. Because of the fact that the Navy set off half a day early, when Loya arrived at the shore, Lieutenant General Crane had already led the troops and waited on the shore with a group of giants who were watching him vigilantly. Crossing his chest with his hands, Loya tilted his head and asked, Yo, what is this? Do you want to get off the horse or just turn your face? During the speech, a faint longway was released from Loya, and the bright weather just now turned dark, like a prelude to a storm. Whether it was an ordinary human navy or a giant with an average height of about 10 meters, they all swallowed nervously in the face of such terrifying pressure. Boom. Huh. Loya's head turned further, and then he looked at Robin with a bewildered expression, and said aggrieved, Why did you hit me? We'll dismount and turn face prepare so much food. Look farther away. After listening to Robin's words, Loya discovered that behind the Navy and the giant, there was a table as high as 2 floors, filled with cooked food. And not far from the table, there are also small tables that are very miniature for giants, and various delicacies are also placed on them. Indeed, if it is to disembark or start a war, there is no need to worry about preparing meals. The attitude of the giants and the Navy is only because of their fierce reputation, and it is necessary to be vigilant and watch out. Oh, there was a misunderstanding. I'm sorry everyone. Loya put away Longway instantly, not caring how scary he was just now. In this regard, one of the giants breathed a sigh of relief and stepped forward. Welcome to Elbaf, Ice Dragon, Loya. I am the village chief here, Loki. This person is different from other giants. Not only is he taller than ordinary giants, but also reaches a terrifying height of nearly 20 meters. And he has not wrapped his body in simple animal skins like other giants, and he is wearing a complete set of metal armor that is very precious to giants. He has slender cheeks, and behind his back hangs a huge épée that is taller than others. Just standing there, this person exudes an aura called tyranny. It's like a giant beast that is about to wake up. In addition to being a little ugly, Loya saw him and thought of Aho in the Azeroth tribe. I heard that every leader of Elbaf is the most powerful existence in the village. I don't know if it is the same at other times, but at this moment, it seems that there is no trace of adulteration in this rumor. Looking up at the acting village chief of the Elbaf warrior village named Loki, suddenly, Loya jumped onto the shore, and the whole person inflated at a terrifying speed, as if he was blowing up a balloon. The giants stared blankly at Loya, who had never been a little bit taller than their feet, and turned into a behemoth whose height was second only to Loki. I saw Loya holding the giant dragon's head and reaching out to greet the stunned Loki. This way you and I will be more comfortable, don't you think, my family? Ben, this family. Chapter 585 Invisible Revenge. Yes, look. Loya pointed to himself. My name is Loya, your name is Loki, we are all from the Luo family, what do you think we are not from our own family? What is this called? Yes. Fate. Huh, is that so? Loki obviously couldn't adapt to Loya's familiarity, and turned his head to look at the subordinates he brought as if asking for help. Who knows that they have a heavy face at the moment, seriously thinking about whether Loya is the Rocky family. At this time, Lieutenant General he was at the side to relieve the siege. She coughed twice and said, let's eat first, and then we can finish eating if you have something to do. Yes, let's eat first. Loki found an excuse, pulled Loya and said, you must be very tired since you have come from a long way. I have prepared dinner for everyone. Let's eat first. Then I'm welcome. Loya looked surprised, then turned around and placed her palm flat, letting Robin step on it. Seeing that Loya, who was in the awakened state of the Dragon King, took Robin to the dining table, Kizaru turned his eyes slightly and asked, it seems that he was disturbed by him. Ah, yes, Lieutenant General Crane said with a lingering haze in his eyes, he is not the kind of guy who will swallow this breath secretly when he suffers a loss. Revenge has come. Then our plan. The plan remains the same. Since I keep the old man's life, then I must let his conspiracy go bankrupt. I regret making this decision. Just as Crane and Kasaragi were secretly communicating, everyone knew that Fujitora, who was not far away, felt more and more cold at the moment. The meals of the giants do not seek exquisiteness, but only large portions. And in order to provide enough energy for the giant's huge body, the meals are mostly meat-based. In order to entertain the guests, Loki ordered his men to hunt down 2 sea kings, but they were quickly eaten up by a group of people. Among them, Loya ate the most, and almost a whole sea king went into his stomach. This made the giants present relieved, and felt that Loya was not as dangerous as the Navy said. In fact, the birth of the giant soldier pirates is actually just a matter of life. Don't look at the area of this island as comparable to a continent, but in terms of the size of a giant, it is indeed only a village. The small area means insufficient resources. The reason why Dongli and the others set up the giant soldier pirates is to plunder more resources to feed the population in the village. In addition, the giants, whether they are radicals or moderates, are usually not so violent. If you want to win their approval, in addition to overturning powerful warriors in sideshows with powerful arm strength, eat and drink. Eat and drink better than anyone else. It's also a feasible way. After all, who called them giants? Compared with other races, these 2 restrictions are basically impossible to complete. Whether it's wrist strength or appetite. But there is an exception at this moment, that is the ice dragon. Loya, who was angered by Ms. S, is a real rice bucket. Bang. Cheers. Keep drinking. Whoever runs is the grandson. Wow, Billy is dead, he vomited. It was getting dark now, but dinner wasn't over yet. If they don't have anything to eat, they simply fight for wine. The 2-person tall wine glass, filled with wine, weighs several hundred kilograms. Let the people from the Navy come to drink it, and drink it until the alcohol poisoning bladder explodes. But Loya is different. This is a cup that is bigger than his slap, and it is still filled with shoddy drinks made by the giants with low alcohol content. Even if there is no Dragon King awakening and becoming bigger, he will not stop taking a cup in one breath. After a few simple glasses of wine, Loya used his appetite and alcohol to mix with a bunch of giants, and now sat side by side with Loki, laughing and scolding the giants who spit it out. Looking at this scene, Lieutenant General he just felt bad. Because they are the ones who need to contact the giants and prepare for the next battle. Now this scene, no matter how you look at it, it looks like a wedding dress for Loya. Robin sat on the small stool beside Loya, and was shaken by their exaggerated laughter and slapped the table again. The dishes in his hands fell to the ground. He had to sigh helplessly, and took out a napkin to wipe his hands. At this time, she glanced at the navy who was eating quietly in the distance, and after thinking about it, she summoned one arm to turn into a step, and walked down Loya's body. Seeing him coming, Kizaru was obviously a little nervous. With such a great opportunity, should we arrest Nicole Robin here? But Lieutenant General Crane stopped him with his eyes, and said lightly, Nicole Robin, what's the matter with you? Seeing how boring you are eating, come and chat with you. Robin put on a table and chopsticks unceremoniously, and sat down so calmly. While cutting the fried sea kings, Robin said, speaking of which, Ms. Crane, you don't know yet, do you? Me and Loya are going to get married. No, I heard you're engaged. Robin's opening made the Crane a little confused, and cautiously did not follow the topic. But it doesn't matter, Robin wants to say it. She elegantly put the cut meat into her mouth, feeling the taste of the fragrant gravy blooming in her mouth. Then he said slowly, yes, but the wedding date has not yet been determined. I originally thought that when my garden is completed, the wedding will be held there, but it turns out. Click. The ceramic plate was crushed by Robin's sudden increased force, and the knife was nailed directly to the table. Robin is really like her nickname at the moment, like a demon, with low air pressure all over her body. As a result, Guido and Blackbeard attacked Turtle Island, destroying my garden, and I had to postponing the wedding. Gollum. Lieutenant General Crane felt something called the resentment of leftover women. But then, Robin smiled sweetly, changed the tableware for himself, continued to cut the steak gracefully, and said calmly, I don't like the way Roja kills people, but I understand that this is essential. Things. In fact, he doesn't like killing people either. Killing pirates is just to engrave fear and despair in the deepest part of their hearts. Having said this, Robin suddenly asked, Ms. Crane, do you know? I don't know, I am all ears. That's. Chewing the steak, Robin had a mischievous smile on his face, guess. Back on the table, Loya glanced at Robin and asked, daughter-in-law, what did you say to that old woman? I think her face is so ugly. Nothing, just inform her that if you have time, come and have a glass of our wedding wine later. Cut. That bastard old woman has been against me before. Why did you ask her? At this time, Loki, who was beside him, leaned over and asked, Brother Loya, are you getting married? Congratulations. Yeah, this is my wife, Nicole Robin. Be pretty. Seeing the Loya child introducing himself like a treasure, Robin nodded politely and said hello to Loki. Then silently added a sentence in his heart. Please, but does she have a chance to come? If you want to ask Loya what he likes to do to the enemy, Robin can tell the world responsibly that he prefers to engrave despair in the enemy's heart, once and for all, rather than punching his prey to death. Chapter 586 Tyrannosaurus storming into the village. Some people say that the Chinese wine table culture is dross and should be despised. Some people also say that the wine table culture is a kind of essence and should be inherited. But Loya wants to say, it's none of my business. You are talking about the hype, I still go my own way if I'm not happy. To change one's own way of life because of a contradictory point of view, or even to make a conclusion about an object that one knows nothing about because of other people's comments, that is an act that can only happen if the waste reaches a certain level. To live is to be happy and enjoy life. Of course, if during this period, you don't have to worry about the little things of the world, your family is happy, and your family is healthy, that's even better. Loya used to be an ordinary person with such a small dream. Traveling through this event brought him many uncontrollable changes, allowing him to see landscapes he had never seen before, and allowing him to learn more things. If he now loses all his strength and returns to Earth, with his current ability, he can easily fulfill his dream. Not to mention anything else, just standing there now, he has a solemn temperament that makes people dare not look directly at his face. This is the depth of the combination of power, strength, and resourcefulness. Not proud, not arrogant, not humble and unyielding. However, the life before the crossing has long since left him, and now Loya has gradually forgotten the previous days. To become the new guardian of dreams, to take care of the earth and the world of One Piece at the same time, is his greatest wish now. But no matter how he changed it, there was an ability that was engraved in Loya's bones, allowing him to repeatedly build miracles on the battlefield without gunpowder smoke in the workplace, and he also benefited a lot from coming to the world of One Piece. That's wine table culture. This world is mainly based on the island country where the old thief Oda is located, and integrates the pirate culture of the West, so no matter where he is, the ability of Royana to fight on the wine field is fresh and unpredictable. When Loki dazedly hooked his shoulders with Roha, at this time Roha, including Lieutenant General Crane, could see that if it wasn't for the reason that the leader was still restraining himself, Loki reckoned that he would really pull with Loya sworn in his brothers with different surnames. So for this scene, Luoya was proud of the spring breeze, while the navy headed by Crane looked gloomy. Needless to say, the vaccinations that arrived half a day in advance were directly destroyed by a glass of wine from Loya. Instead, they were ahead of the navy and laid a solid foundation with the giant country Elbaf. Lo, brother Loya, today doesn't count. We continue tomorrow. Hiccup. Loki couldn't hold it any longer, and after saying this, he immediately fell to the ground with his head up. The huge body was smashed into the soil, and the coast was like an earthquake, and the rumbling sounded non-stop. However, this movement has long been accustomed to the giants, and they still slept soundly and snorted like thunder. Shrugging, Loya glanced at the giants lying around in a circle, drank the rest of the drink in the glass, and licked his lips. It's been a long time since I drank so much. Continue tomorrow. Soon, Loya, who was burping with wine, turned back into a human form, and was helped by Robin to go to sleep in the house arranged by the giants. The next day, Loya woke up very early, and the alcohol in her body evaporated under her strong constitution. After getting up and stunned for 2 seconds, Loya found a cup taller than others to quench his thirst, and asked sleepily, "Robin, why is it so noisy outside?" But no one answered. Turning his head, Loya realized that Robin, who was sleeping beside him, had long since disappeared. The temperature remaining on the quilt told Loya that it was at least half an hour ago. All the enemies of life were released, and Loya quickly found where Robin was. Standing up and patting the folds on his clothes, he waved a piece of ice slag to wash his face, and Loya disappeared in a flash. Standing on top of a huge, ordinary, dwelling, Loya glanced at Robin, who was writing and drawing in his notebook from time to time, and asked, "What are they doing?" National customs. In the open space not far from the house, a giant warrior who had been drinking with Loya yesterday was confronting a sturdy Tyrannosaurus. The surrounding giants formed a circle of people, holding all kinds of weapons and roaring loudly to cheer. The weapon advantage and the number advantage are all there. Why is that person fighting the Tyrannosaurus alone with his bare hands? Hearing the sudden sound, Robin was startled, then rolled his eyes and said, "That Tyrannosaurus wandered into the village this morning and bit Billy's son. Now Billy is going to hide his skin. I pulled it out to make a dress for my son, so I went into battle empty-handed. A tyrannosaur more than 10 meters high bit Billy's son. And Billy, the daddy, is going to peel it off to make clothes. This kind of wild dog outside the village bit his son, so the sight of the old man wanting to kill the wild dog and stew the hot pot made Loya bewildered. What should I say? Is it the kingdom of giants?" At the same time, Roha sympathized with the Tyrannosaurus who strayed into the village. Billy was a warrior brought by the acting village chief, Loki, and his strength was definitely one of the best among the giants. The Tyrannosaurus, which was originally not dominant in size, did not need to say much in the face of giant warriors of the same size and experienced in combat. Looking at the current situation on the field, it is estimated that Billy is thinking about how to deal with this Tyrannosaurus without injury, so as not to be ridiculed by the onlookers. But Billy can slowly think about countermeasures. The Tyrannosaurus obviously can't wait. The surrounding giant warriors were more terrifying than each other, and the icy blade made it smell the breath of death and became restless. Seeing that Billy's attention was slightly distracted, the Tyrannosaurus roared and rushed towards Billy. Laugh. At the critical moment, Bai used his arm to block in front of the Tyrannosaurus Kiba's teeth, and at the same time folded his arm and slammed his elbow into the depths of Tyrannosaurus' throat. Asshole. But even so, the Tyrannosaurus Kiba teeth still scratched a few deep tooth marks on his arm, and blood splattered all over the place. The enraged Billy heard the laughter around him, and he was furious. He grabbed the Tyrannosaurus's neck with his backhand, and forcibly pulled it out of his arm, and then hit the ground heavily. Boom. Loya, who was sitting on the roof, only felt that he was in the air for a moment, and then his butt fell on the dry withered vine. Suffering such a heavy blow, the Tyrannosaurus head was a little dizzy, struggling to get rid of control, but now Billy opened his eyes to Yuhi, raised his blood-drenched fist, and slammed it on its head at once. Boom, boom, boom. Next is the time for the unilateral beating. The Tyrannosaur's wailing gradually became weak from the beginning, and finally stopped breathing slowly, and the belly was not heaving. Just hear the click. Billy's fist pierced the Tyrannosaurus' skull, leaving a large hole in the ground. Bah, you're cheap, you bastard. Billy spat angrily and let go of the big hand that caught the Tyrannosaurus' neck. It was only then that Loya discovered that the Tyrannosaurus Rex's thick skin had 5 bloodshot blue-purple dents. Looking at the scene of the human-beast battle that was punching to the bone, Loya shrugged. So now you understand. How did Elbaf get his reputation outside? After the battle, Loki saw Loya on the roof and waved to him. Hey, brother Loya. Eat Tyrannosaurus meat today. No problem. Leave the thighs to me. Fuck off. This is my trophy. Billy growled angrily at the two of them. In this regard, Robin gave Roha a helpless glance, and whispered, You are almost. Chapter 587th Roll. Roll as far as possible. After a while of promise, today's lunch was determined to be the Tyrannosaurus that Billy killed. At the dining table, Loya glanced around and asked, What about the Navy? Why didn't you see their people? Oh, you said those guys. Loki took a sip of wine and said, I said it was very strange that the Tyrannosaurus would appear in the village, so they volunteered to go to the forest to find out the reason. After a pause, Loki looked at Loya. Brother Loya, I heard that the Navy is here to monitor you. You are not stupid, are you? Loya smiled slightly and replied, Yes, they are afraid that I will cause trouble here, so they want to monitor me. Cut, I don't think they are that simple. Elbaf didn't have too many rules between superiors and subordinates. Billy and his son were also present at the dinner table, each with a bandage wrapped around his hand. Hearing Loya's answer, Billy said disdainfully, The leading old woman quietly went to see the great elder this morning, probably because she wanted us to join the Navy camp and help them. Shut up, Billy. The elder has his own ideas. Loki scolded, and Billy had to sit down and eat. At this time, Loya asked, Speaking of which, Loki, are you still the Prince of Elbaf? Where is your father? We're still friends without mentioning it, Loya. Loki looked depressed and said, That bastard has lived in the forest for all these years, and he doesn't care about the village, and he is not allowed to see him. What's more annoying is that the elder still supports him. My current position as village head is still handed over to me by the chief elder out of nowhere. Tell me, what is this? Those who don't know think that I'm Loki usurping the throne. Quote. The old village chief actually lived in the forest. Don't let anyone else see him. In this regard, Loya and Robin looked at each other and both smelled an unusual smell. Do you know what he's doing in the forest? Or guess what he's doing? Then I don't know, I'm probably messing around with his dream when he was young. By the way, Loya, don't be angry when you say it, the sword my father wants to build is named Dragon Slaying Sword. I started talking about it as early as 100 years ago, and it is definitely not aimed at you. Puff. Hearing this name, Luoya spit out a sip of strong wine, raised his head and said in shock, "What did you say? Dragon Slaying Sword? Your father has seen a real dragon." I heard him say this. Anyway, he was the only one who saw it. The ghost knows if he has drunk too much. Is that so? Loya touched his chin and suddenly said, "The old village chief and the chief elder just forbid you to see him. Then am I, an outsider, not included in this sentence?" "Ah, it should be like this. Are you going to see him?" Loki was stunned, then nodded, "But you have to be careful, the cave he lives in is a bit evil, I was standing at the entrance of the cave before. Don't dare to go in." "That's why you were scared by your cowardice. I just said that the position of acting village chief should be handed over to me." "Ha ha 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 ha. Bastard. Want to fight?" As soon as they disagreed, Loki and Billy scuffled together in an instant, just so straightforward, so direct, so urinating. Loya calmly hugged Robin and jumped to the top of the cabinet at the edge of the house to take refuge, and then said to her, "Navy, maybe the purpose is not just to contact the giants. Then are you going to go this afternoon?" "Well, be careful, I'll keep a clone by your side." Outside the giant village, there is a majestic and rough huge Matsuri altar. What Billy saw was not all, he only knew that he had brought people to visit the great elder T-Beard before, but he did not know that until now, he still did not give up lobbying. "Elder T-Beard, the next war will determine the direction of the world. Elbaf can't be alone. Joining us will not only help the Navy, but also benefit Elbaf himself." However, no matter how beneficial the crane was, T-Beard was still in a hurry. He took a giant broom more than 10 meters long and cleaned up the dead branches and leaves scattered around the Matsuri altar. No oil and salt, no stubbornness. This is how Crane thinks about T-Beard now. However, the determined Lieutenant General he would not back down so easily. Zhang Zongko was ready to continue persuading. "If you can pull Elbaf on the big ship of the Navy, it will be more than enough to double their backbone. Elbaf is the most powerful country in the world. The kind of soldiers who can be compared to lieutenant generals of the naval branch after a little training, giants can be said to be everywhere. Every family, men and women, young and old, is a soldier. If you can tie such a huge combat power to your own warship, it will be worth it no matter what the price." However, T-Beard seemed to be deaf, and he was still unmoved by the generous rewards offered by the crane. If she hadn't heard T-Beard speak before, Crane would have thought that the old giant in front of her was deaf and dumb. Well, of course, the only thing T-Beard said was, "Go back, Navy." But at this moment, T-Beard finally said the second sentence. However, without waiting for the crane to express her surprise, the content of those words made her heart drop halfway. "Guy West and Oimo, are they working for you on Judiciary Island now?" "No, I don't know who they are." The crane's face was a little ugly, but his voice was still neutral. "Lakeville, are you a member of your giant army now?" Hearing this, the crane's face turned black, and he knew that this matter had turned yellow. In these two sentences, the two people in front were the crew members of the giant pirates who were deceived by the world government and guarded the gate of the world government without knowing it. The one in the back is the first giant child that Carmelite sold to the Navy, and is also a giant from Elbaf. After so many years, the crane thought that the giants had already forgotten about this matter and found nothing. But she didn't expect that the T-Beard in front of her not only did not forget, but even knew it clearly. He casually glanced at the crane, and T-Beard's calm eyes gave the crane a creepy illusion. But fortunately, soon, T-Beard removed this look and continued his cleaning work. "A war with the Navy will cost both of us a lot. As the chief elder of the village, I will not allow the people here to live in the war. So, you can stay here for 2 days, and then." After saying this, T-Beard's hand holding the broom bulged, trying his best to suppress his anger. Go away. The farther you go, the better. In the forest, the Navy officers led by Kisurugi and Fujitora were following the traces of Tyrannosaurus running all the way, slowly searching for any suspicious clues. If there were some doubts before entering the forest, then the result now is definitely strange. Because judging from the footprints, the Tyrannosaurus rammed all the way, without a pause, and charged straight towards the village. It's as if there is something terrible behind it, chasing it, and it has to flee for its life. Sensing the unusual smell, Kizaru waved his hand to tell the soldiers not to scatter too far and explore slowly in this dangerous forest. If nothing else, Garshala is very likely to be hiding in this forest. Unlike Loya's revenge to solve hidden dangers, the Navy does not allow the appearance of the next, Big Mom. Standing on the tree trunk, Kizaru lit a cigarette after a long absence and took a deep breath. Fujitora, do you feel it? Hey, this ominous aura. The old man felt it as soon as he stepped into this forest. Fujitora clenched the scabbard in his hand slightly, and with a pair of turbid white eyeballs, he looked at the stone mountain in the distance. Chapter 588 The Undead of the Giants. The forest always gives people a very dangerous feeling. It turns out that it is indeed very dangerous. Compared with the small garden where Dongli and the others fight, this forest is even more dangerous. Not long after the Navy soldier walked, he was jumped by a group of raptors with their tongues out. Sitting by the river to rest, a big snake the size of a house came out from behind. The mud they had stepped on clearly turned into a huge earth-brown beetle the next moment. It is estimated that there will be casualties if it goes on like this, and the yellow monkey ordered the soldiers to shrink the defense circle and not be too far apart. Anyway, they can't find the remaining clues, so it is better to rush to the destination directly. If you run away, the monk can't run away from the temple. Is there any problem? Just take a look and you will know. Under the leadership of Fujitora and Kisamu, the Navy team passed through the forest without any risk and came to the stone mountain that they had seen before. Soon, the evil cave was discovered. Because, how to say it, is it the place where giants live? This is a huge cave with a height of more than 30 meters. The stone walls are covered with marks of knives and axes, each of which is several meters long, exuding a rough and dangerous atmosphere. The incomparably huge cave in front of me was actually carved out by the tools of life. You guys, find a place to hide outside and keep in touch at all times. Standing in front of the cave, Kizaru rarely restrained his usual wretched expression, and arranged the soldiers in a serious tone. Yes. For some reason, as soon as they saw the cave, the soldiers had the urge to run away. Hearing that there is no need to follow in at this moment, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief and trotted to set up the team. Slowly pulling out the saber, a drop of cold sweat dripped from Fujitora's forehead. He is blind and cannot see the sights around him. But the kind of depression and terror that goes straight to the heart is clearer than ordinary people. Before he actually met the enemy, being able to let him pull out his saber was enough to prove the pressure the cave brought him. Hey, Fujitora. Kizaru put his hand on Fujitora's shoulder, so frightened that he almost slashed it. Kizaru looked at the pale Fujitora and asked, "What do you feel?" "Death. Ultimate, breath of death. Looks like we've come to the right place." After eating and drinking, it was already half an hour later when Loya came to the cave according to Loki's directions. It is quieter than anywhere in the forest, as quiet as a ghost. Feeling the movement around, Loya frowned strangely. Didn't the Navy come here before me? Why can't even a living person feel it? Loya used to be in the Navy, so he knew very well that in general, to carry out this kind of task, not to mention more, 2 soldiers guarding the door or monitoring the movement are essential. This is pure military literacy. Being able to become a general, he doesn't believe that Kizaru will bring everyone in without a brain into this weird cave that even he feels a little uneasy. What the hell is going on? Frowning his brows, Loya quietly strengthened the protection of the ice armor, and walked into the cave step by step. Unexpectedly, there is no darkness in the cave as imagined. The stone walls and soil are exposed with strangely shaped stones, flashing slightly fluorescent in the dimness, allowing people to see things clearly without lighting a torch. There is no clue that there are still people living here. The abandoned tools stacked in the corners can be vaguely seen to be the size used by the giants, but they have become extremely fragile in the passage of time. With a light touch, they are scattered into countless fragments. At this moment, Loya suddenly saw a footprint in a puddle, and the size was definitely not left by a giant. And judging from the turbidity of the mud inside, the owner who left this footprint passed through here not long ago. Taking a closer look at the surroundings, Loya felt something was wrong. The number of people who came from the Navy this time was in the hundreds. Even if most of them stayed on the warships on the shore, there were dozens of people who followed Kobo and the others. But at this moment, there are only the footprints of 2 people inside, and no other Navy was found outside the cave. Where did these people go? Just when Luoya didn't know where to go, suddenly, a roar that didn't sound like a human voice came from the depths of the cave, and the stone wall above the shock's head couldn't stop falling ashes. Then, a familiar explosion sounded, and a golden light suddenly appeared in the depths of the cave. Kazuna is fighting. With whom? Loya immediately made a judgment, and the second stage of acceleration suddenly disappeared in place. Before he could go far, a shadow appeared in front of him, blocking the only passage in the cave. Through that shadow, Loya saw that Kobo's hands and feet had turned into light particles, condensing a terrifying laser attack. Beside him, Fujitora's breath was a little sluggish, and he was half-kneeling and covering his chest. Feeling the breath in front of him, Loya suddenly widened his eyes. This is the undead. Loya. At this time, Kizaru also saw Loya, and immediately scolded, "Look at what you have done." "None of my business. I just came here." Roar. The subconscious sentence was sprayed back, and the shadow in front of Loya suddenly moved. The long sword with the white bandage on its back was not pulled out by it, and the size of the cave did not allow him to pull out the weapon. The giant undead roared, and pounced on Kizaru empty-handed. Boom, boom. The lightspeed kick of the giant yuhi tree, which was enough to break the shampoo, didn't achieve the expected results. I saw that the giant undead just tilted its head slightly, and then faced the explosion and smashed it down with a fist. Damn, where is this hiding? The size of the cave was indeed large enough to accommodate a giant fighting here, but Fujitora was behind him at the moment. If Kayaburu avoided the attack, Fujitora might be smashed into flesh. After all, the opponent's sneak attack on them just now seriously injured Fujitora, and the power is not terrifying. Suddenly, Loya's voice echoed in the cave. "Get down." I don't know what he meant, but Kizaru and Fujitora still followed what he said, lying on the ground without saying a word. Then, a chilly air blew through the air, stiffening the minds of both of them for a second. Boom. The fist of the giant undead smashed directly on the ice shield, making countless ugly cracks on the ice shield. At this moment, Loya's figure suddenly skyrocketed. The Dragon King's awakening was fully open, and he came to the left side of the giant undead in a flash. Puff. The sharp claws clasped into the giant's thighs, and the rancid blood was frozen into ice slag before it was splashed. Seeing that the giant was about to fight back, Roha roared and lifted it up. "Let's go." Boom. The earth was like an earthquake, and the terrifying giant taller than Loki was overturned by Loya. Then, without waiting for him to continue to resist, Loya pulled one of his feet, shook his arm, and shook from left to right. Bang, bang, bang. This time the giant undead can't make any resistance at all. As soon as he started to struggle, he was thrown by Loya on the stone wall on the left, and then continued to struggle, and was thrown to the stone wall on the right. Repeatedly, the huge body was swayed by Loya like a rag. Looking at the scene in front of him, Kizaru touched the cold sweat on his forehead a little nervously. "It's so scary, so scary. Fortunately, I didn't participate in the previous incident at all." Chapter 589 Loken's Experience. When the movement calmed down, the cave was more than doubled by Loya's brute force. I don't know what the main material of this mountain is. In this kind of fight, it still remains intact, and it doesn't look like it is about to collapse. Returning to his human form, Loya glanced at the other side and stopped struggling, as if a giant undead had been killed, and asked, "Who can explain to me what's going on here?" "What do I still want to ask you?" Huang Yuan was angry. "Who else can create undead except you? You are so courageous, you even hit Elbaf with your idea." "Shut up if you can't speak." Loya raised his fist, making Kizaru look stiff and stop complaining. Fujitora on the side could barely stand up after a period of rest. Looking at the situation in front of him, Fujitora said, "We came here to look for the dragon-slaying sword, but we didn't expect to be attacked by the undead old village chief Elbaf. Mr. Loya, are you sure you didn't make this undead?" "Hey, Fujitora, you're talking too much." Glancing at Kizaru again, Loya held his hand and said, "The undead I made are all self-conscious, like this brainless defective product. It is not my handwriting at first glance." At this moment, suddenly, a voice that did not belong to the three rang out. "He is right, I will become like this, and it really has nothing to do with him." "Who?" Kizaru assumed an attacking stance subconsciously, then took a deep breath and looked at the huge figure that got up over there. "Yo, can you still be awake?" Loya was also a little surprised, and then said with a smile, "Can you tell us what happened to you, old village chief Luokan?" Taking a deep look at Loya, Loken, whose face muscles had begun to rot, nodded and said, "Yes." After listening to Loken's story, Loya also understood what happened to him. Many years ago, Loken was a young man who had just taken over as the village chief. One day, when he was out hunting, he encountered a terrible storm, and the boat he was riding in was smashed. Holding a piece of wood, Loken floated to an unknown island. The dangerous creatures on the island were no threat to Loken, who was the mayor of Elbaf Warrior Village. He searched for suitable trees in the forest and planned to rebuild a wooden boat to return to Elbaf. It was at that time that he saw in the depths of the forest, a legendary creature that only existed in myths and legends, a living dragon. Elbaf is extremely brave. Thinking of the dragon-slaying heroes in the biographies, Loken couldn't help himself. He was very confident in himself when he had just become the village chief. The young people were enthusiastic and ready to stage a dragon-slaying legend. Then, the other party didn't even lift his eyelids at all. With a random flick of his tail, Loken flew from one end of the island to the other. The severely injured Loken killed my life immediately, but I waited. For a long time, he did not wait for the giant dragon to come and kill them all. After learning his lesson and recovering from his injuries, Loken used the newly made weapons to lay traps, trying to seduce the dragon into the trap and realize his great cause of dragon slaying. And then, he failed again. The trap that I thought was extremely dangerous was the same as the wooden sword played by children in front of the dragon's scale armor, not to mention piercing the muscles, and even leaving a white mark on the scale armor. On the contrary, it was the cesspool trap he made out of boredom, which made the dragon suffer a lot. Qualified hunters all know the importance of hiding themselves. This cesspit is called a trap, but in fact, the main purpose is to hide his body odor. Unexpectedly, the giant dragon didn't pay attention and stepped in. Then, it was a one-sided fight. Loken clearly felt that his bones were shattered by the opponent, and the blood flowed non-stop. He could only lie down in the forest and wait to die. But fortunately, an extremely rare storm came that day, submerging the entire island, and also washed Loken into the sea. At that time, Loken's only impression was that the giant dragon soared in the sky. Against the background of thunder and rainstorm, he looked down at himself on the sea with a high look, and then he lost consciousness. When he wakes up again, it will be 3 months later. Loken, who was floating on the sea, was found by the soldiers who went out to search for the village chief, and he was lucky enough to save his life. Then he said to everyone that he was injured by a giant dragon. Dragons are real. Regarding Loken's words, the rest just thought he was hit too hard and couldn't bear it, and no one took it seriously. After all, didn't some people say that they saw a giant dragon in the past few years? As a result, it was later confirmed that the man was either lying or misreading what kind of Neptune. But no matter what the villagers say, Loken still firmly believes that he is not mistaken, and secretly swears that he must build a dragon-slaying sword that can break through the scales of giant dragons and fulfill his dream. What happened later? Loya had already known Akatsuki through Loki. After being the village chief for many years, Loken came to the depths of the forest, dug along an existing cave, and lived here. However, there is one problem that cannot be explained. Since you came back alive, why did you become the ghost you are now? That's all thanks to the sword behind me. Suddenly, Loken bit Kiba and gnashed his teeth. All this is the conspiracy of the evil dragon. Later I found out that the guy who told me the news was completely not from our village. Wait, it's a bit messy, let me stroke it. Loya interrupted Loken and slowly said the known information. First of all, you've seen a real dragon and been badly wounded by it. Then, you are going to build a dragon-slaying sword that is enough to break through the dragon's defense and fulfill your dragon-slaying dream. Are these all right? Looking at Loken nodding, Loya continued. After that, there was a giant clan. At least it seems that the guy from the giant clan told you something and asked you to come to this cave to build weapons. Now, the weapon looks finished, but you've become this way. Wait, how do you know what a guy who looks like a giant told him? Kizaru suddenly interrupted and asked, and then met Fujitora and Roha's eyes when they looked at ZZ. That's right. Loken didn't care about this trivial matter. He bit Kiba and said, she told me that there is an iron ore that contains the essence of the whole mountain. She said that weapons made of this iron ore will definitely be able to slash the scales of the dragon. But, after I finished this weapon, a very strange power suddenly appeared in it. It was that power that made me who I am now. I can't leave this cave. Then, what about weapons? Can they really kill dragons? Huang Yuan suddenly asked a question, and suddenly, the whole cave was quiet. After the question, Kyabu screamed badly, and sure enough, Luo Ya's Yinsichi sounded immediately. A celestial dragon family, 13,000 navy elites, 20 large and small forces. General Yellow Monkey, you say, if I add 1 or 2 generals' corpses to the list, the world government will be more powerful. Satisfied. Chapter 590 Loya's Revenge, the Navy's Break. In the first half of the Great Route, which is very far away from Elbaf, there is a medium-sized island that is not unusual. Simple and ordinary, such islands are countless and countless on the Great Route. This island has not been looted by any vicious pirates, nor has there been any world-famous powerhouse. It is like a place that has been deliberately forgotten, and only exists in the word of mouth of the surrounding islands. It is precisely because it is too common and does not belong to any one of the 7 waterways, so the residents of the island are always safe, peaceful and comfortable. Until this day comes. Instead of riding on the flamboyant dragon boat, hundreds of undead soldiers dressed themselves up as ordinary merchants and drove a merchant ship to the port. This island has the common problem of the first half of the Great Route. It is too ordinary, and there are no guys who can use domineering. So the undead soldiers easily deceived the guards and checked into the hotel in the port town. It was already dark, and the leading people gathered together to exchange the information they had inquired. A few days ago, there was indeed a high-ranking guest who lived in Central City. The civilians here don't know them, and they don't wear fish tanks. But judging from the signs that the guards hid in their cuffs, it's definitely the Mephisto family. Very good. I finally found it. Send the news back, send more people, and don't startle the snake. Understood. Meanwhile, somewhere in a naval base. This is the basement of the base, a prison that ordinary soldiers don't even know about. Pretending to be a captured slave, the undead soldier curled up in the corner, pulled the suture on his stomach, and took out a phone bug hidden inside. The target has been confirmed. There is indeed a slave trade here, and the leader of the base is the base commander of this base. However, there are still many soldiers who did not participate or even knew about it. My lord's orders are the same. Don't worry too much, the troops will arrive in 3 days, so be careful to hide yourself. Understood. In places where the Navy and the world government have not noticed, or have been subconsciously forgotten, undead haunt in the shadows, with endless hatred for the living and extreme loyalty to their masters. No one knows how many soldiers Turtle Island lost in this battle, but according to the dissatisfaction of the Dragon Boat Fleet, Loya's loss was not so easy in this sneak attack. But they didn't know that in those unseen places, more undead awakened from the darkness, like locusts, and slowly eroded into important bases, cities, and ports. After waiting for a few days, with Loya's order, a comprehensive and bloody massacre began. Blue blue blue. The 103 bases in an emergency. Request for support. Request for support. Ah. Marshal, you can't stop it. They're attacking. What do you want? I'm a soldier in the Navy headquarters. PFF'd. A burst of bubbles echoed in the command room, and there was still some movement of liquid flowing in between, and then the sound slowly disappeared. A few seconds later, a voice familiar to everyone present came from the phone bug, because the owner of this voice was the guy who reported it just now. For the master. Kill them all. Bang. Akainu smashed the iron command table with a fist, and the rolling magma baked the hard steel. Staring with a pair of eyes, Akainu questioned the old man in front of him angrily. Why didn't you order an attack? That's the important force of the next war. What if we attack? We can save a few. Qingzi was very calm, shrugged and said, and just like we forced Loya to make a decision before, this time, he is forcing us to make a decision. Quote. The Navy doesn't need to compromise with criminals. Then go kill him. Aokiji roared out unceremoniously, until Akainu was speechless. Yes, then you go and kill him. But, is it possible? If possible, did they need such painstaking calculations? If possible, how old is Blackbeard? Why would you make a deal with the Navy? With a gloomy face, Akainu took a deep breath, bit Kiba and said, it's all to blame for that old guy from the Weston family. I'll kill him now. After saying that, Akainu waved his cloak, turned around and prepared to open the door. Go back to the old man. Frightened golden light illuminated the command room brightly, and a sense of ultimate danger climbed up Akainu's forehead along his spine. He turned his head dazedly and spoke in disbelief. Marshal. This time, we were careless. Sengoku in the form of Buddha closed his eyes and gave an order with a cold face. From now on, the Navy refuses to obey any orders from the 5 old stars. Including the Tianlong people. What we have to do, just destroy the pirates. This is treason. This is peace. Sengoku roared, and the whole house began to tremble. Unlike Akainu's extreme, the rest of the people, including the rest of the Hawks lieutenant generals, also lowered their heads at this moment and dared not speak. As Sengoku said, this time, they lost. In the past, Loya felt that it was useful to keep the Navy, so he did not do it. And now, they have undoubtedly angered the most terrifying powerhouse in the world, and made him think of replacing him. The soldiers who are constantly dying and resurrecting are the clearest declaration. No one is irreplaceable. As soldiers, they know this better than anyone else. They are used to seeing the scene of life and death. They know that no matter who the world lacks, it will continue to operate as always. Loya is telling them his attitude. Force Sengoku to make a choice. From the outset, the Navy should be on its own. Because they have an incomparable trump card. Zephyr and Aokiji, Loya's 2 mentors. Neither the world government nor the Tianlong people want to bear the anger from Loya. As long as Loya does not collapse, they are absolutely safe. But they made a wrong decision, thinking that they could disintegrate Loya's power by conspiracy. A crazy powerhouse and a terrifying force, the latter is undoubtedly a greater threat. It was the Mephisto family who made this suggestion, the 5 old stars supported and promoted it, and Akainu was the first to make a statement, but in the end, it was Sengoku. After a long silence, Sengoku said slowly, let's all prepare, it's time to announce the sentence of, Fire Fist, Ace. Now the glory we have lost must be redeemed with Whitebeard's life. Yes, Marshal. When the others walked out the door, the phone worm suddenly rang. Sengoku wearily picked up the phone bug and asked, "What's the matter?" "Marshall, something is bad. The Mephisto family has been killed." "Huh?" The wrinkles on his face wriggled several times, and finally Sengoku heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "Has any other Tianlong people expressed their views?" "No. I will take care of your family." "Yes, for justice." Hanging up the phone, Sengoku sat down in his chair. At this moment, he no longer has the scenery of the Commander-in-Chief of the Navy, just a dying old man. Chapter 591 Trace. In the cave, when Loya finished saying that, Kizaru laughed dryly and didn't answer. After Loyado glanced at him, he continued to say to Loken, "Can I check that sword? I think I should find something." "Well, but be careful. I've tried many times, no matter what kind of creature it is, as long as it is alive, it will become an undead once it is posted," Loken said with lingering fears, and then took the heavy sword from his back, which was about the same height as him, and placed it in front of everyone. No magic fluctuations. This is something that Loya discovered long ago. This is a simple giant sword similar to the black iron épée of Dugu Chofang, but the shape is more in line with the aesthetics of this world. The sword body is widened and the hilt is thickened. Both sides of the giant sword were sharpened, and the left and right sides of the front were an everted blade with an arc. It is more suitable for slashing than the black iron épée, but not suitable for thrusting. The workmanship continues the roughness of the giants, but the quality also continues the style of the giants. Boom. When he raised his finger and knocked, there was a sharp whistle from the thinnest part, which shook Loya's fingers and hurt, but he himself was unscathed. This is not pure steel. This hardness is even more terrifying than Halu stone. Loya sucked in a breath, looked up and asked, "Village Loken, do you have any leftover ore? The residue is fine too." There was originally. Hearing this question, Loken frowned and said, "But every day I become an unreasonable undead half of the time, and one day after the undead, I can't find it no matter how I look for it. The rest of the ore. I guess where did it go when I lost my mind? Isn't there even evidence left?" Loya smelled the aura of threat, but at least one thing is certain, that is, Loken's encounter has nothing to do with someone who hides the ability of soul fruit. But it hurts that a new threat is surfacing. Blue blue blue. The phone bug's voice suddenly echoed in the empty cave. Kizaru glanced at the others, then took out a phone bug from his arms and picked up the receiver. "The plan has all failed. Sengoku has sent an urgent contact, asking us to go back immediately." "Understood, but Ms. He, I have some small discoveries here." Huang Yuan picked up the phone and walked away, lowering his voice in comfort. Soon after, Crane's surprised voice came, "Nani? There is such a thing. Bring back that sword at all costs. Even if we fight Elbath." "Oh, are you going to fight with my friend, Lieutenant General Crane?" Luoya suddenly appeared behind Kizaru and grabbed the phone bug. Kizaru shook his head with a wry smile and said, "This is the problem, I said." The phone bug didn't hang up, and the crane on the other end didn't speak. Staring at the familiar face in front of her, after a long time, she exhaled the turbid air in her lungs and said, "Come back right away, we're leaving today." "Yes." Hanging up the phone, Kizu greeted Fujitora and said goodbye to the two of them. Looking at their backs leaving, Loya suddenly asked Loken next to him, "By the way, Chief Loken, will the fluctuation of this sword spread to the outside?" "I don't know, because I can't leave this cave. Every time I get close to the edge, I will lose consciousness. When I come back to my senses, I will go back to the depths of the cave." Loken shook his head decisively. "Oh, is that so?" Loya nodded and continued to study the huge sword in front of him, which had his waist high when lying flat. Just as Kizaru and the others walked out of the cave, suddenly, the human-shaped ice cube beside Robin suddenly moved. Pieces of hard crushed ice melted like water, smoothing out the edges and corners, gradually forming the appearance of Loya's clothes. Then, the color appears on the ice, bringing the texture of the skin and clothing to life. As if not surprised at all, Robin waited for the ice cubes to stop changing before putting down the book in his hand. It's done. Did you find anything? One point. I'll talk about it when I get back. The clone stood up from the chair and patted the ice flag on his butt. There's a good show to watch now. Do you want to take a look? What are you up to your bad idea? As the saying goes, knowing the son is more like the father, knowing the husband is more than the wife. The latter sentence is purely nonsense, but the truth is the same. Seeing the fox laugh of Loa who stole the cock, Robin knew that he had no good intentions. Don't worry about it so much. The Navy fights Garshala. This is a once-in-a-lifetime drama. Gasara. Understood. Hearing the name, Robin instantly understood Loya's plan, closed the book and stood up. If it doesn't look good, I can apply for a refund. Loya. Originally it is free to see where you come from and the tickets can be refunded. When Loya and Robin were bickering, they walked out of the cave. Kizaru and Fujitora breathed a sigh of relief, and then instantly raised their hearts. Seeing the silence around him, Fujitora drew his weapon silently. General Kasaragi, have you seen the traces of the soldiers? I can't feel their breath. That's right, the soldier is gone. Was attacked, or went back. Neither of them could tell. Even if Crane asked them to go back immediately, they couldn't evacuate without Kayabu's words. If the giants attacked them, there must be no small movement, and they must be aware of it. But if it was Loya who made the shot, it would be possible to hide them from the perception of the two and destroy them, but then the temperature here would definitely become very low. Moreover, if they want to kill people, Loya has no reason to let them go regardless of directly attacking this group of soldiers who are not even cannon fodder. In other words, in addition to the Navy, Loya and the giants, there may be a fourth-party force on this island. Suddenly, Fujitora's ears moved, and a purple gravitational wave shot into the sky. Gravity knife meteorite. The enemy is well hidden, and a simple point-to-point attack might be avoided. In addition, this is an uninhabited field, so there is no need to worry about accidental injury, so Fujitora chose to clear the field on a large scale. Boom! The sky continued to explode, and all the giants raised their heads in a daze, looking at the meteorite that was constantly approaching the island. Their mouths widened. That's a meteorite. Watch out, the meteorite has fallen. Bring the kids home. Loki came out carrying his big sword and glanced at the crowd, but did not find the figures of Roha and Robin. Could it be the Navy and Brother Loya got into a fight? No, I have to help him. After making up his mind, Loki called his powerful subordinates and said, "That's the ability of a blind man in the Navy. You guys, arrange someone to protect the villagers and the elder, and the rest will follow me into the forest." Yes. Under the gaze of countless giants, the meteorite smashed heavily into the center of the forest, followed by an earth-shattering explosion. Rumbling. Bang. Sitting on the back of the ice wolf, Roha pulled out an ice wall to resist the shock wave formed by the meteorite, and said to Robin behind him, "How? I didn't lie to you, this face value is not worth the fare." Just barely. Although summoning meteorites to attack the enemy is indeed frightening, it is enough for the ignorant to see that Fujitora is worshipped as a god. But Robin has also experienced the existence of strong winds and waves so far. With a husband who is a high-ranking naval leader by his side, he is not moved at all. Moreover, she soon noticed the drawbacks of this move. The power is stored for a long time and the speed is slow, and once it is played, it will be out of control. The power is barely strong, and it is impossible to deal with the strong. But to clear the trees to make a clearing, it is just practical. Chapter 592 Navy vs Gasara. Sitting on the back of the ice wolf, Robin asked in a particularly puzzled way, "How do you know that the other party must be Gasara? When she sees you and the Navy landing on the island, shouldn't she run far away?" It's okay for others to say that Kizaru and Fujitora are just pure fruit power users, but Loya is definitely the most feared existence by Gasara. Loya's power is mainly reflected in ice and resurrection, but in addition to these two main branches, Loya has developed other branches. For example, Qian Lintu, who represents the ultimate of quiet, can tie an island into a sieve with one move. Moving, ultimate, ice clone, sharing thinking and magic, like a living person. The most important point is that Loya, likewise, can control the soul. For those with soul fruit ability, the existing information shows that their body is their soul, and the death of the body is just leaving the shackles and becoming more fragile, just like Perona at the beginning. And since Loya, who can also control her soul, is here, once Garshala's body is destroyed, her soul will not be able to escape Loya's perception. When the time comes, it will be killed or slashed. Isn't it all about Loya's mood? For this question, Loya has some guesses. Maybe it is because we are here that she doesn't want to leave even more. Pointing to the faintly visible cave in the distance, Loya explained, that cave has the aura of my kind, and it is the aura left by a kind that is stronger than me. Longway plus some other magical means makes it impossible for the undead to enter or even get close to the cave. The suppression effect on the living will be smaller, but the body of Garshala has long been classified as the undead. So she needs someone to go into the cave and bring that sword out. Did you get the dragon-slaying sword to deal with you? That's how it is. After careful consideration of Loya's words, Robin nodded with a sense of understanding, and suddenly looked terrified. Wait, similar. Is it another dragon? The effect of the gravity knife meteorite is outstanding. With just one move, a huge crater with a range of more than 1 kilometer was opened in the forest. Whether it is a stone or a tree, all of them are turned into powder under this trick. The Navy's new Lieutenant General, Fujitora, known as the Monster, smiled and revealed his kiba at this moment. Before the smoke cleared, Fujitora observation haki swept away and said decisively, to the southeast. He is so fast. It's already on the edge. Leave it to me. Kizaru said confidently, and then his body quickly became elemental, turning into a golden light, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Fujitora was about to catch up with him, but suddenly he stopped and looked at the pothole he punched out. Inside, a tragic death of the Navy soldiers lying in the dirt. Judging from the fact that they are not damaged, they were buried deep in the ground long before Fujitora brought the meteorite. The ability to control rocks. Sure enough, that guy. Fujitora bit Kiba Seiki firmly, waved his knife, the mud under his feet supported him to fly, and quickly left the place. As a blind man, relying on the fruit ability to fly is much faster than taking the 11th bus. Never let that murderer go. This is Fujitora's secret promise to the dead soldier. 10 minutes after they left, there was a thumping sound from the forest. Loki rushed here with the soldiers of the village and looked at the huge pit in front of him in horror. What the hell happened? The village chief. There are footprints here, and they're going that way. The giants are all born warriors, blacksmiths, and hunters. After all, living on this island, they can't derive any other decent occupations. Billy poked the dirt on the ground, smelled it and said to Loki, Brother Loya and the others have been here too, but there are other people's breaths. Got it, let's chase. The enemy's speed is not fast, at least for Kayabashi. The speed at which he burst out with all his strength, even Loya sighed. In addition to being unable to fly long distances, Kizaru is the world's well-deserved first speed. But no matter how fast he is, the enemy is hidden underground, and Kizaru is out of reach. Boom, boom. The laser and the speed of light kicked to the ground like no money, like a light rain. The dirt and stones along the way were easily lifted and flew away, leaving terrifying scars on the ground. It's just that the opponent, relying on the natural protection of the ground, only needs to shift the direction slightly to make the powerful attack of the yellow monkey useless. Fortunately, the other party could not completely cover up the traces left by his high-speed movement, otherwise Kayabu wouldn't even be able to find the other party. However, this stalemate will not last too long. Not far away is a mountain composed of the same stone mountain just now. Once the other side escapes into the endless stone Yamanaka, Kizaru is really powerless to revolving heaven. Immediately, without much care, Kizaru decisively used his own trick. A segment of the sky. Bang. The fifth segment of the sky. Bang. Every time the speed of light kicks, it will leave a deep pit in the ground. Several times, the moving breath is shrouded in the attack range and cannot escape. It can only deepen its position and avoid the attack on the top of the head. But this can't last long, and it seems that deepening his position is also a kind of torture for him, so every time the attack ends, the opponent will sneak up for a while, and then continue to avoid the next wave of attacks. However, at this moment, Kizaru has finished charging up. The final stage, the sky kicks at the speed of light. Golem. The figure underground felt a terrifying force condensing above his head, and swallowed involuntarily. Kizaru's strength has not improved much in the past 2 years, but because of the frequent use of this move, he is now using 5 stages of charging, which is much more proficient than Roha's death battle. So this time, the coverage range is as high as 100 meters. The golden light Jinchuriki column covers the sky, and descends from the sky to the earth. Boom, boom. Everyone's sight was blocked by the golden light and the explosion of fire, and between the gusts of wind, several tons of sand and stones were lifted up, making them like fluffy goose feathers, rolling up 100 meters in the air. The explosion of light brought a terrifying scorching heat. Looking at the crystallized soil in the pit, Kizaru frowned. No, he's not dead. Just as Kizaru was searching for the battlefield, a stone Jinchuriki column quietly rose from the ground in the distance. Then it opened like a coffin, revealing Garshala in a black nun's robe. At this moment, Gasara was a little embarrassed, and the traces of the explosion could be seen everywhere on her body. There is a black yuhi on the forehead, not only blood dripping, but also thick yellow oil. Seriously injured. Seriously injured. Hiding behind the tree, Gasara sensed Hormiz's disappearance, bit Kiva and walked towards the edge of the forest. She is too weak now, and is far from an opponent of the highest combat power in the navy like Kizaru. I thought Kisararu and the two would not be able to find out at all, but unexpectedly, a sudden fluctuation forced her to reveal her figure, so that Fujitora caught the trail. Damn it! What the hell is the dragon-slaying sword? Chapter 593. Watch the battle. Didn't this kill you? Leaning on the back of the ice wolf with Robin, Roha silently looked at Kizaru who was slowly falling from the sky. Although it is a clone without feeling, when he saw the golden light traversing the sky and the earth, he still felt a pain in his back. That's Kizaru's ultimate move. A terrifying move on the same level as Aokiji's Ice Age and Akainu's Meteor Volcano. Who knows, even with this level of attack, the other party still managed to survive by relying on Hormiz. Don't say anything else, just this life-saving ability. Gasara's new stone Hormiz has indeed surpassed the previous Prometheus and Zeus countless times. The ability to give lifeless material souls is too buggy. Kizaru is really miscalculating this time. Robin calmly watched everything in front of him and replied, then she tilted her head and asked, "Aren't you shooting yet? What are you doing hiding in the hole?" Loya's avatar strength is not bad, and now that Garshala has been hit hard, she should be able to clean up with her avatar. There are fluctuations on the dragon-slaying sword. I have to try to trace the source of this power. There is a bigger enemy in front of me, and I don't have time to care about this little guy. Loya shrugged and said, "Let them fight first, I just need to prevent her soul from escaping." After all, Roha flicked his finger, and an ice crystal flew through the air and hit the heel of Gasara who was running away. Who attacked me? Gasara turned her head away in anger and fear, thinking that the enemy still had an ambush. But when she saw the ice crystal that fell to the side, fear appeared on her ghostly face for the first time. Ice. Why is he here? Isn't he still in the cave? Where are you fleeing? This movement is enough for a powerhouse of this level, but in an instant, Kizaru appeared on the tree trunk above Gasara's head, and said in a vulgar tone, "Those with the ability of soul and soul fruit, add. It's time to call you Garshala. The Navy has a comfortable prison for you, come with me." It's ridiculous. Gangji Yukong didn't catch me back then. How old are you, a yellow-haired boy? With a sneer, Gasara waved a hand, and a human face appeared on the tree trunk where Kizaru stood, and then vines quickly beat over him, trying to entangle him. However, the whistling vines gave a loneliness, and fluttered through the chest of the yellow monkey. Marshall Kong is not a natural type ability person, so every one of your hormies is a great threat to him. But I am different, I am a natural type. These hormies can't use domineering, do you think they can hurt me? Call out. In a flash, Kizaru has come to Gasara, the bright golden light condensed on his feet, exuding a dangerous atmosphere. Have you been kicked by the light? Bang. Speaking of which, you're already like this, hasn't Huang Yuan discovered us yet? Seeing Kizaru completely ignoring him and flashing past not far away, Robin couldn't help but feel curious. There is an ice curtain around the ice wolf, wrapping them in it. Robin pointed at it and said, "What kind of ability is this? Can it block our breath?" The ice prism I used to escape from the Navy headquarters was originally only used to distort light and deceive ordinary people, but I continued to develop it a little later. How is it? Not bad. So, CO authored Have you ever been in jail before? And then escaped prison? This is nothing to brag about. Robin looked at Loya speechlessly, always feeling that his previous life was really not colorful. However, Loya said immediately, but it's okay to deceive Kizaru. If it's Aokiji or Fujitora, then there's no way. As a frozen fruit person, Aokiji is very sensitive to the temperature changes in the air, and he can be found without observation haki. And Fujitora's observation haki has gone to another extreme that is different from Katakuri. The intensity and range are the highest in the world, and naturally they can also detect the existence of Loya. Just like now, Fujitora stood outside the ice curtain and touched the ice with his hand. Mr. Loya, thank you just now. If it wasn't for your help, I would never have found the murderer who killed the soldier. In the eyes of the uninformed outside, Fujitora is now not only a blind man, but also a lunatic, speaking into the air. No thanks, that's our common enemy. Loya shrugged and said, you try to force her soul body out, and I'll keep my back to grab her. Quote. I will try my best next time. After saying that, Fujitora stepped on the accelerator. Bah! Activate the fruit ability and continue to step on the stones to fly to the battlefield. Kizaru did fight Gasara, who was powerless to fight back, but his abilities couldn't control her, and he could only trap her with uninterrupted continuous attacks. When it comes to capturing the enemy without using the seafloor stone, Fujitora's gravity fruit is undoubtedly more suitable. After Fujitora left, the forest behind the two shook, and then giant soldiers emerged from the jungle. Billy approached the place where the two were hiding, rubbed the soil on the ground with his hands, put it in front of his nose to smell the smell, and then put out his tongue to taste it, and finally said to Loki with certainty. Village Chief, Brother Loya's aura disappeared here. Understood, everyone is looking for them separately. Don't let them be surprised. Looking at this scene in a daze, Loya made a small opening and stuck his head out from behind the ice curtain, then. What are you looking for me for? There is a war on the island, don't you need to protect the village? I'm going. The sudden sound made Billy startled and raised his head. Loya's head was a few meters in front of him. This distance was only a step for the giants. Looking at Loya blankly, Billy suddenly trembled with his hands and feet, his face flushed. Yuhi pointed at Loya and said, I'm right in front of you, why don't you make a sound? Huh? Ah, what? Die, bastard. Boom. With a fist, he turned the jumping Billy hammer to the ground. Loki walked over to the two of them and squatted down. He breathed a sigh of relief. Ah, Loya had a black question mark in her head. So it is. Thank you, Loki. After listening to Loki's narration, Loya suddenly understood their thoughts. It turned out that his reputation was not loud enough. Loki didn't have a clear understanding of his own strength. He thought he was attacked by the Admiral of the Navy, so he rushed out to save people. This moved Loya very much, really. But it's embarrassing to make an oolong. especially when he knows Billy's nickname, the Hound, which makes Billy feel ashamed and wants to fight him all the time. His nickname was only known to the core group of warriors led by Loki, and now that Akatsuki was known by an outsider, Billy only felt his ears were hot. What's worse is that Loya teased him shamelessly. And you, Hound, Billy, thank you for caring about me so much. Bastards. Duel. For the glory of warriors. Sure enough, Billy flipped the table immediately and was about to duel with Loya. Chapter 594 Ambush. A dignified giant, what a bad nickname, but it is a hound. That's a dog. In this world, there are no so-called dog lovers, who are ignorant of right and wrong, unreasonable, whose life is greater than human life, and whose morals are corrupt. Cursing. Especially when Billy was young, he was complacent about this title, thinking that it was the performance of the enemy's fear of him, and he took it out many times to show it off in front of everyone. This state of affairs continued until a few decades ago, when Billy went out to hunt and rescued a wrecked merchant ship. At that time, there was a little girl with a newborn calf who was not afraid of tigers. Next to Lee, he said, Johnson. Billy will be a hound in the future. Even the name is the same. The ghost knows what a major psychological blow Billy suffered. But if you think about it, it's not much worse than the whispers of the ancient gods. After that, Billy would rather die, beat anyone who dares to call him this nickname again, and train another young giant to become the new stalker of the team. Over time, the title, Hound, disappeared from Billy, but it was his eternal black history. With a slap, Billy turned over Yuhi's eyes, and Loya expanded the ice curtain and wrapped the giants in together. Who the hell is the Navy fighting? Loki asked. It seems that Kyabu has been attacking. Who can last so long? Looking at the traces of destruction around him, Loki said with lingering fears. The giant country Elbaf is indeed the world's most powerful country, but that is the comprehensive strength. On the battlefield, a well-trained giant warrior can be used as a battle formation. But looking at high-end combat power, Elbaf is far less than other major forces. Innate advantages have prevented them from developing any advanced combat skills, and the only hegemonic country is too difficult to learn. And eating devil fruits is even more disrespectful to God. Therefore, Loki was very surprised at the power Kizaru showed at this moment, and was especially shocked by it. Speaking of this, Loya feels that it should be the time for a showdown now. The relationship has been laid down, and even if you ask it, it will not arouse the disgust of the giants. You still remember decades ago, did a nun named Carmelite set up an asylum called the House of the Lamb here? Of course I remember. Speaking of this, Loki's face was gloomy. That hateful monster killed the heroes of our clan. If it wasn't for Elder T-Beard to let them go, I would definitely kill them all. In fact, that's T-Beard protecting you. Loya didn't say this because he understood where Loki's anger came from. For the giants, the enemy is the enemy, and there is no distinction between men, women and children. He didn't understand why T-Beard let them go, but in the village, T-Beard was the absolute authority, and a village chief's son didn't have the right to question his decision. After speaking, Loki was stunned and said, could it be that the human being of Carmelite is fighting now? How old is she this year? Well, it's that old woman. Seeing Loya nodding, Loki took a deep breath. The lifespan of the giants is 350 years old, and it took only a few decades for Loki to change from a young man to a middle-aged man. But if this time is placed on human beings, it is a proper half of a lifetime. Carmelite was dying at that time, how did she live to be now decades later? And also fighting with the yellow monkey. Well, Loki, who hasn't learned to be domineering, doesn't know that it's time for a one-sided hang-up. Do you remember the sun god who appeared at the Matsuri altar at that time? Loya understood where Loki's surprise came from, and said eloquently, it was actually just her devil fruit ability. A kind of she takes her soul as her body, a devil fruit that is not bound by her body. And this ability can also allow her to live in other people's bodies to achieve a symbiotic effect. Now she has changed her body, and there are still decades live. There is still such a fruit. Loki was as dumb as he was listening to a fantasy, but because of the trusting relationship he had with Roha at the wine table, Loki did not suspect that Roha was lying to himself. After being stunned, Loki stood up decisively and walked towards the battlefield with the giant sword on his back. No. This guy actually slipped back to Elbaf, I must go and see. But before he could take a few steps, Loya's ice was in front of him. The specific process will be discussed later, as long as you know that both I and the Navy target her. Besides, her body is a soul, and now only I have the power to control the soul, so don't make trouble. Humph. Then you'd better not miss it. Otherwise, none of your friends will have to do it. Loki hesitated for a moment, but agreed with Loya's statement. After all, the fighting in the forest over there is so good. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like a 100-year-old old woman is fighting. By the way, while I have time now, let me tell you about your father. In the forest, Kizaru fully saw the difficulty of those with the soul fruit ability. It is obviously seriously injured, but the body is the soul. No matter how many blows Gasara receives, she can perfectly exert every strength of her body. This is like the feeling that Loya has felt before. Gasara is like playing a game, but there is a conscious body controlling the body. However, it's almost there. He was hit hard by the speed of light kick from the sky, and Gasara's condition was not very good. Coupled with the continuous attack of Kyabu, until now, it is still hanging by that breath. However, there is no means of hurting the soul. Once Gasara dies, Kizaru cannot guarantee that the other party will not escape from the body again and choose to escape. That's why he didn't kill her in the first place, but was just going to take her back. Boom. Crash. The ghost knows how many other people's souls Gasara has stored. Everywhere, those rocks, trees, and even water sources can be turned into homets for her to manipulate. But obviously, Hermes like Prometheus and Zeus is not something that can be created easily. These miscellaneous fish-level Hermes can only block the attack of Kyabashi a little, and then they are blown to pieces. Embarrassedly dodging the lightspeed kick from Hermes, Gasara looked around and found an opportunity to take advantage of. She was not simply dodging, but slowly approaching a cliff. Below that canyon, there was a sea current flowing from the crevice of the island, and a beast cave near the water source was where Gasara lived during this time. As long as it jumps into the sea, Kyabu's attack will be greatly weakened. And she has already investigated the terrain clearly. She knows that the river will pass through a cave, and has arranged the backhand. As long as she floats along the river, she can go down the river to avoid the pursuit of the yellow monkey. In a cave with such a dense passage, even if they knew their location, they would not be able to find a way to catch up for a while. But, the idea is good. Just as Gasara was calculating the distance and preparing to break through, a bright light flashed into Kizaru's eyes from a distance. This is... He immediately saw Fujitora, who was hiding behind a tree, and drew his weapon, and the direction where Fujitora was the direction Gasara was about to escape from. Time to send you on your way. Garshala. Kizaru grinned, crossed his hands, and his arms suddenly turned into a dazzling golden light. 8 feet Joan Tomo. Chapter 595 Off You and Eternal. In the eyes of outsiders and even Kizaru himself, Gasara was just fleeing in embarrassment, panicking like a frightened beast. But Fujitora's observation haki told him that Gasara's seemingly panicked escape route never left the cliff. Just like what Loya said, this little trick is enough to fool Kasaragi, but if you want to fool Fujitora, there is no drop. Don't think about it. Gasara roared, and a large clump of bushes spread up, blocking the countless light bullets. But in just 1 second, these Hermes were penetrated by the powerful light bomb, and a strong explosion was produced. Rumbling. The destruction effect brought by the large-scale attack is very significant. Even the giant's hunting has never caused such huge damage to the forest. Layers of earth waves rolled up, and the smoke and dust covered the sky. It's now. Taking advantage of the moment when Kizaru was blocked by Hermes's fragments, Gasara took a deep breath and made the body that had reached its limit move again. Oxygen enters the blood vessels along the alveoli, and the heart is re-energized, beating rapidly, and like a steam pump, it supplies powerful power to the body. With a sudden kick on the ground, Garshala flew through the only remaining forest like a bolt of lightning. Hard to imagine. A person can still explode at such a speed when a small half of his bones are broken and several large pots of blood are bleeding. This is almost the same as the limit speed when she broke out unscathed. Close. Coming soon. Ahead, the sunlight shining through the leaves is getting more and more dazzling, and Garsara is full of joy. Suddenly, her eyes lit up, and a large forest appeared in front of her. The sky and the mountain peaks meet in the distance, and Garsara suddenly has the illusion of reopening the sky. But now is not the time to be happy. The acceleration just now can only get her to the edge of the cliff, and there is a final challenge waiting for her. No one needs to prove how fast the yellow monkey is, but the ability of the yellow monkey to react is the weakness that checks his speed. At this moment, Kizaru has already had the intention to kill, and even if he cannot arrest himself, he will kill himself on the spot. Generally speaking, when an enemy is about to jump off a cliff, the first reaction is that the opponent has some means of escape. In order to prevent accidents from happening, Kizaru will definitely use a powerful attack to ensure that the kill is completed. And Garshala is doing just the opposite. Instead of jumping off the cliff on his own initiative, he wanted to rely on Kizaru's attack to speed up again. After all, to be honest, for a powerhouse at this level, especially Kizaru, the speed of the fall is enough for him to run back and forth more than a dozen times. Only an attack from himself can achieve a speed that he can't keep up with. Very dangerous. One miscalculation is the end result of being beaten to death. But once it succeeds, it means that you have escaped. If transferring the soul has no side effects, how could Garshala abandon this body? Immediately, Garsara paused for a moment and made a decisive leap of faith after confirming that Kizaru had found her trace. Then, gravity knife hello. The old voice and the purple gravitational waves suddenly appeared in the air, like a cage, trapping Garsara who had just left the cliff and had not yet started to fall. The powerful gravitational force kept churning and churning in the cage, and in just an instant, it tore apart Garshala's skin and muscles. From a distance, it looked like a broken porcelain doll. That's not right. It should be an old woman doll who the ghost knows is hundreds of years old. The effects of gravitational waves left and right each other, counteracting the falling force, leaving Garshala trapped in midair helpless. She bit Kiba, resisting the terrible gravitational torrent. Looking towards the strong blind man came out from behind the tree. Fujitora smiled. Why are you there? How could you be there? Obviously, she has already checked her escape route with domineering, and she has not received any feedback at all. Even if there is a breath of life, they are just some shivering little animals living in tree holes. Where did a tiger come out of here? Pulling out all the blades and releasing the gravitational waves with all their strength, Fujitora slowly approached Garsara. The old man is blind, so observation haki is a little stronger than ordinary people. Although your excellency's domineering is good, it is more than a star and a half short of finding the old man who is hiding with all his strength. Observation haki can counteract observation haki, preventing snooping. It can also be wrapped around the body, so that other people's observation haki see and perceive their own breath. However, doing so is difficult. Because domineering is not a mental scan in fantasy, but more similar to a listening power. Making sound is easy, but blocking it is undoubtedly harder. But unfortunately, what Garsara met was Fujitora. A blind man. As long as they are healthy, blind people can hear better than ordinary people. Observation haki, developed according to the power of listening, is naturally more suitable for blind people to learn. This is an innate advantage. Let Fujitora's arrogance and domineering surpass that of a powerhouse of the same level by more than a rank. The gap in hard power is not wrong for Garsara to lose. Is that so? Garsara knew that she was wrong, and she had no plans to struggle. However, this is not a complete dead end. Then your gravitation can work on the soul. Suddenly, Gasara smiled coldly and glanced at Kizaru, who had just arrived. "Next time we meet, I will make you pay the price." "It's so scary and so scary." Kizaru smiled slyly and asked, "Then what are you going to do?" "Ms. Garcera, being imprisoned in the city is still alive. Be free or die." Click. Before she finished speaking, Garcera tried her best to turn her head fiercely. Fujitora's gravitational waves are chaotic, but each one occurs at intervals of less than a second. It was precisely by seizing this opportunity that Garshala gave up resisting, and instead twisted her neck by herself through the gravitational wave that came down. Yes. She committed suicide. On the head that turned 180 degrees, a strange smile solidified, making people shudder, like a declaration of revenge. However, not only Kizaru, but Fujitora didn't react much to Gasara's death. The calm reaction of the two made Gasara in the state of the soul uneasy for a while. She didn't understand why they were so confident. No, she should be called Carmelite now, because she is invisible to ordinary people. Just like her old face decades ago. But no matter what you do, just run. Immediately, Gasara fluttered down the wind and fled to the distance. But at this moment, Kizaru suddenly shouted, "Loya! Garcera is dead. It's your turn to play." Nani? Through a Hormuz's observation, Loya has not left the cave at all, which is also the most fortunate thing for Gasara. So what is Kazuna shouting now? Just when Gasara was thinking about it, a figure she would never forget suddenly appeared in front of her. It was her nightmare. A terrible nightmare. It was the guy in front of her who destroyed her foundation, destroyed everything she had, and made her run away like a lost dog. At this moment, when the enemy met, Carmelite instantly glanced at Yuhi, but what followed immediately was the coldness that penetrated into the soul. "Long time no see, first meeting. Ms. Carmelite." Fluttering his wings, Loya slowly stayed in the air. "Don't worry, I don't know if destroying your soul can completely kill you, so I'm not going to do that. But, shut you up as an eternal, even if you are a real god, it is estimated that you should almost die by yourself." As he spoke, Loya's stomach suddenly sank, opening a hole, making Carmelite uneasy for a while. But soon, the magic power was tumbling, and Carmelite, who had no time to react, was pushed into it. Then the pothole quickly closed, completely freezing it. No. The shrill screams only lasted for a short second, and Carmelo lost his consciousness. Before falling into darkness, she heard the last words Loya said to her. "By the way, I have studied it, the dragon-slaying sword. It can indeed slay dragons. But you can't enter that cave without being alive at all. Are you angry?" Puff. Somewhere, something seems to be broken, but it has nothing to do with Loya anyway, isn't it? Chapter 596 / The Dragon Sword. Get. Emotions can make people stronger. Loki is an obvious example. He was standing at the entrance of the cave before, and the terrible malice scared him to go in. But at this moment, knowing that his father has become an undead, all those small complaints before have disappeared, and there is only a son who is worried about his father. Let him summon the courage and walk into this dangerous cave. Moving step by step in the dark cave, suddenly, there was the sound of mud rubbing in front of him. Loki swallowed nervously and asked, "Father, is that you?" There was no response from there, but suddenly, the sound became intense, as if something was running fast. Roar. A beast-like roar echoed in the empty cave, and in less than a second, a huge black shadow appeared in front of Loki. The cave is still a little narrow for the giants. Loki subconsciously prepares to counterattack with the vertical sword, but just halfway through, the giant sword is blocked by the passage above his head. Crap. With a chill in his heart, Loki looked at the fist that came, the skin texture on the finger, and the scar of different colors, which was indeed the father he was most familiar with. Why become like this? The rotten face and the dazzling pupils made Loki feel heartbroken. Then, boom. The vibration was not accompanied by pain. After a few seconds, Loki opened his eyes and saw a familiar figure. Loya, what are you doing? I don't know what level of undead Loken is. This is really amazing. Only by using such a big move as Dragon King Awakening can Loya guarantee to suppress him without destroying him. Hearing Loki's questioning with anger, Loya blinked and let go. Bang! Wow! Being hit by Loken's fist in the stomach, Loki felt as if he was hit by a sea king, and spit out a large mouthful of blood in pain. Then, Loya continued to press Loken to the ground, rolled the eyes of the dead fish and said, "Just doing this." Loki. I have a phrase, MMP, that must be spoken today. After a few minutes, Loken regained his senses and sat up in a daze. What just happened? I remember you going to pee, and... Wait, why did my rib break? And my hand, it's a broken bone, right? It's an unimportant little thing. Loya coughed without changing his face, and pointed to the bandaged figure over there. Your son is here, do you have anything to say? Rocky. Turning his head quickly, there was a bit of surprise in Loken's eyes, and then endless anger. Dwang. This time, Loya, who was a spectator, felt pain, not to mention Loki who experienced it personally. Giants are all reckless, who cares who you are? Jumping up all at once, Loki threw a fist at his dad. Why did you hit me? It's against you. Not to be outdone, Luoken even said that he was trembling with anger. I'm your father. I can't even beat your first elder. Dwang, dwang. As a result, the father and son in front of them started a friendly exchange with a unique and giant atmosphere. The final outcome, of course, is that Loken, who is so powerful after the undead, won the victory. Sitting on his own son's head, Loken slapped Loki in the face with his backhand. Are you satisfied? Bah, disagree. You are cheating. The undead have no pain. Even if the two have the same level of strength, Loki can't be Loken's opponent. Not to mention that Loken is stronger than Loki, both in terms of combat experience and strength. Should we get down to business? Seeing that the two were about to fight again, Loya reluctantly interrupted them. The two looked at each other and sat apart. Cough, so what? First of all, I declare that your father's appearance has nothing to do with me. If you don't believe me, ask him. Of course I believe you, Loya. Knowing what Loya wanted to express, Loki looked at him sincerely, but I need to know the truth. Well, if you're still there after listening to the three views. After some exchanges, in addition to retaining the clue of the ancient weapon, King of Heaven, Loya told Loki generously about other things. After listening to the story, combined with Loken's personal evidence, Loki was a little dazed. It turns out that there are really giant dragons in this world. Nonsense. Do you think your father and I are the big talker, Rolando? Loken snorted disdainfully from the side, feeling very unhappy about his own son's distrust. As for Rolando, well, Loya didn't tell them that Rolando had been rehabilitated. As long as he went out for the first half of the walk to inquire, this news is not a secret. Then, what's next? Loki frowned and said, Loya, can you help me change my father back? They tried it, but it's a pity. Loya shook his head and told Loki the answer directly. The power level that turned your father into an undead is higher than mine, and I can only take a small part of it. Intervention to keep him sane a little more each day. Quote. Is that so? Loya is now the only life-saving straw. Since he said no, then this straw is gone. Immediately, Loki's face was a little decadent. It's hard to see my father who I haven't seen for many years, but I didn't expect such a result, which made Loki understand that some things can't be solved with fists. Look at how cowardly you are. Loken suddenly slapped Loki in the face again, looked at his Yuhi eyes, and said cursingly, even if I become like this, isn't there still you? You are my son, how could you not protect the village without the support of my father? But... Loki moved his mouth, trying to explain something, but couldn't continue. In this regard, Loya had to sigh. A father who is not good at expressing feelings and a son who is not good at expressing feelings have been separated from yin and yang, and regretted their whole life. It's very bloody, very conventional, but very realistic, which is a portrayal of all living beings. Even if he thinks he was a smart person before, there are still some things he can't say when facing his old father. The tree wants to be quiet but the wind doesn't stop, the child wants to be nurtured but the kiss doesn't wait. Sorry so far, sorry for the beginning. Wrong. Loken has just become an undead, and fundamentally, he is not completely dead. And as long as the undead are well maintained, they can exist for as long as possible. Immediately, Roha's eyes swept across the father and son in front of him, making the two of them hairy for a while. Loya. What is your boy looking at? No, there is nothing. Quickly withdrew his gaze, Loya sat upright, and said to Loken, there is one thing, I would like to ask you to be accommodating. You said. Loken already understood what Loya meant and wondered if this choice was appropriate. Sure enough, seeing Loken nodding, Loya directly stated his purpose. I want to take the dragon-slaying sword away. It's a giant sword that can break through the dragon's defense. Apart from the giants, only I, who can also gigantic the body, can exert its power best. But other than me, no one else can resist the above curse. So even if just for myself, I have to get it too. You can't go round and round with giants, just pick it out directly, but it's easier for them to trust you. I thought that Loken would hesitate for a long time, but he did not expect that Loya had just finished speaking, and he immediately made a decision. No problem, I can give you the sword. But... Loya smiled, and before the word, thank you, was uttered, Loken decisively gave a, but. You must kill that evil dragon and let out this bad breath for the old man. That's exactly what I'm aiming for, Old Village Chief Loken. Chapter 597. I was wrong. 3 more for subscription. Kizaru didn't want to kill Gasara, because he knew very well that none of his people had the power to touch the soul. Once the other party died, the spoils would be Loya's. However, compared to letting Gasara escape and continue to hide in a corner of the world, Loya's cheap is nothing. In a house in the village, the ice clone sat cross-legged beside Robin at the moment, motionless. The giants around came over curiously and looked at the hideous shadow in the translucent ice cube. Is this the human soul? Looks so ugly. Nonsense. The dead person is an old woman, what else do you want? After receiving the news from Huang Yuan and the others, Crane decided to leave without any nonsense. Compared with the responsibilities and missions of the Navy, Loya is undoubtedly more hostile to Gasara. Give it to him, and the Crane is not worried about what kind of moth Loya will come up with. Looking at the more and more giants gathered around, noisily, Robin closed the book helplessly and glanced at his clone. I said, can you stay away from me and affect my reading? No, before the deity comes back, the value of my existence is to protect your safety. Having said that, what can Robin do? Of course, choose to forgive him. The other party was originally a clone created by Loya fused with his own soul fragments. In addition to the different nature of the clone and the deity, it was also a clone of Loya. But at this time, the clone suddenly blinked and finally stood up. Seeing this, Robin asked, are you back? Yes, we have already reached the entrance of the village. This trip to the sea was very lucky, not only solved a big problem, but also obtained a powerful weapon. Since knowing the true body of the King of Heaven, Roha couldn't find a way to solve the unknown threat no matter how he thought about it. That magic power and dragon might that are more powerful than himself, even if he goes all out, the chance of winning is very small. And the birth of the dragon-slaying sword gave Loya a glimpse of hope. Although it was only 1 point, there is still hope, isn't it? It's night, Elbaf once again held a grand banquet. This time it was a banquet attended by all the men, women and children of the whole village, and even Chibeard, who had only heard of him, appeared in the corner of the banquet. Loya didn't talk to him alone, everything was in those grateful eyes. Obviously, this old guy already knew about Loken. But just as he let Carmelite leave to protect Elbaf before, this time he still chose to silently protect his own clan behind his back. A respectable old man. After 3 rounds of drinking, Loki, who was so drunk, pulled Loya's paw, snot and tears. This time, I really thank you, brother Loya. Come on, don't say anything, do it. I didn't see you getting drunk so easily last time. The snot froze before it touched him, and Loya took out his hand in disgust and smothered the wine. Suddenly, he glanced at Robin beside him, and when he saw her dark face, he felt miscalculated. Damn it, I almost forgot about it. In an instant, Loya shot out a lump of ice and smeared Loki's face. Looking at his slightly sober eyes, he asked seriously, I ask you Loki, do you know Hagawal D. Soro? Huh, you said the guy who was a lackey for the Navy. Loki said in a daze, I don't know. He is a member of the moderate faction, not from us here. Moderates. Suddenly, Loya remembered a memory that was hidden deep in his mind. Different giant tribes have different customs and gods they believe in, but in the end they are divided into moderates and radicals. On the surface, these are just 2 different external attitudes, just like the Akainu and Iokiji's lazy justice of the naval radicals. But within the giant clan, there is a clear distinction between the 2. Elbaf is known as the #1 power in the world. In addition to their large number of warriors, the main reason is that they are radicals. All of them are capable of fighting and fighting bravely. Because of roughness, so powerful. In other words, in order to find Saren's family to attend the wedding, Loa should not come to Elbaf from the very beginning, but to find the kingdom of giants belonging to the moderate. That is to say, obviously strong enough to ignore the icy weather, Luoya is as cool as drinking Sprite at this moment. A wave of resentment rose from behind him, and then a pair of jade feet walked all the way along the top of his head, stepping on the bridge of his nose that bulged out after his dragon transformation. With such a close contact, that ominous premonition is getting stronger and stronger. With a cold face, Robin was expressionless, stared at those eyes as big as a truck, and asked lightly, is there anything you want to explain? Gollum. I was wrong. No, you're right. I was really wrong. I said you were right. Give me a chance, I really know I'm wrong. Okay, what's wrong? Yeah, what am I doing wrong? The news still spread uncontrollably. Even with the world government trying to suppress it, the fact that the Navy was separated from the center of power and formed its own line still spread to the whole world at an unreasonable speed. Then, shocked the world. This is something that will shock the world even more than the record created by Biloa. That's deep-rooted Navy. That is the unshakable world government. What do you mean by leaving? Isn't the Navy afraid of being liquidated by the world government? Although it is still under the banner of the world government in name, but not accepting the command of the world government, not obeying the orders of the 5 old stars, and not participating in the task of protecting the Tianlong people. For a time, countless people and countless forces turned their eyes to the Yuhi soil continent, to the aloof, holy land, Mary Joa. Bang! In a luxurious room, Antonio Carlo, the highest representative of the World Government Power Center, threw a vase in front of the 5 old stars. The residue of the vase left bloodstains on the faces of several old men, but they had no time to wipe them at the moment. In fact, when the news came out, it was the 5 of them who were most shocked. They considered Sengoku's response, and considered Loya's revenge, but they never thought that things would develop to this point. But then, there was spontaneous anger, an ultimate anger. Just a mere navy, the watchdog of the world government. A facade organization. He dared to rebel against his master and declared his separation from the world government. Dare to act. Lawless. The 5 old stars secretly held a liaison and prepared to dispatch troops quickly. All the masters from all parties were bound to destroy all the navies that had defected from the world government. However, this approach was directly rejected by Carlo, and the precious vase that had been placed in this room for hundreds of years was broken. Carlo never thought that these 5 old guys were so courageous that they dared to make plans against Loya without telling him. If it succeeds, to be honest, Carlo doesn't care. What is the glory of the family? What is an ancestor's last wish? The interests of the success are the most important. But they also failed. You guys are really stupid beyond my imagination. Panting heavily, Carlo tried his best to suppress his anger. Now is not the time to flip the table and not play. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, Carlo will not use his whole cards, so that everyone will not have to play. The same is true for the 5 old stars. Even if Carlo is violent at the moment, as long as their family power is still there, it is nothing more than a change of choice. Mr. Carlo, now is not the time to hold everyone accountable. Osman stood up, sorted out his yuhi-colored suit, and said slowly, the rebellion of the Navy has a great impact on the world government. Although they are still fighting against pirates, but we have to do something to make it clear that we are still not to be messed with. Speak your plans and die. Carlo gave them a cold look and directly announced the death of several people. Of course, it is impossible for all the 5 old stars to die, so what is the difference between that and directly submissive? But eventually 1 or 2 people will be pushed out to give Carlo an account of the failure. Because of him, he is supreme. Chapter 598 The Battle of Judiciary Island 1. Today is a fine day, with a gentle breeze and no clouds. As soon as he lay on the grass with the fragrance of soil, even the dead would not want to wake up comfortably. There was no way to hide the slaughter of the undead army, and it was soon known to the world as Akatsuki. When the pirates and civilians saw the flag of the Undead Legion raised in the familiar naval base, they felt very scared for the first time. Because no matter how much news I read in the past, it is limited to a dangerous new world. At this moment, these undead are living by their side. All over the sea, endless. But soon, they discovered that life was no different from before. Those who should go to work still go to work, those who open stores still open stores, teachers are still teachers, and bosses are still bosses. It is even said that some unclean bases have become clean under the slaughter of the undead. Those things that could not be said before, now there are people who support them. Even if it's dead. This situation was unexpected by the commoners, and a bold idea suddenly popped into their minds. Seems like the undead are much more reliable than the Navy. Seeing that the end of the year is coming again, the news of this period of time will make people uneasy for 3 days each time, and it is obviously impossible to think of a stable year. On Turtle Island, the reconstruction work has taken off. With the help of the tireless work of the undead and the help of sufficient materials and funds, the new Turtle Island has already taken shape in just half a month. Bigger, harder, longer. This is the request made by the experienced K. Rockdale. Since Turtle Island itself has the ability to split and protect itself, it is a matter of course to ensure that the losses caused by each split are the lowest. So the whole construction project, highlight 2 words. Patience. For example, the wall behind the temporary residential area is already hundreds of meters high and tens of meters thick. K. Rockdale still had people set up densely packed forts outside, and then built several additional firepower bunkers. If the former Turtle Island was only a stronghold for the functions of troops and bases, then the current Turtle Island is completely a war fortress. With its existing firepower, coupled with the huge number of dragon boat fleets, it is not a problem to sweep any forces under the premise that the highest combat power outside various situations is not used. In front of Turtle Island, the war house of the Vinsmoke family can only be reduced to a simple little snail. Of course, in this way, the site of the Scientific Research Institute will inevitably be requisitioned and forced to be transferred from the ground to make room for the construction of the fort. Gaisa found Loya many times to reflect the problem of the underground environment, and in the end, he only won the privilege of leaving a building on the surface for himself. After all, what else could it be? Rockdale was right. If there was another invasion, it would be much safer to stay underground than to stay on the ground. And after Ratchet's death, Gaisa is the biggest scientist on the island, and he controls a large share of the funds. For the sake of sufficient experimental funds, Guy thought about it for a while, but instead laughed slyly. However, there is another better-funded institution on the island than the Academy of Sciences. That's El Nilu's Golden Proverbs Lab. The undead were all put into the reconstruction work, and Anilu couldn't find anyone to help with the gold. As a result, the homeless slaves on Gurintezolo became Anilu's helpers. After Loya nods, they get the right to build a town on the outskirts of Turtle Island and will settle here. Although the size of Turtle Island is only a small island, it is no problem to accommodate several towns. As a result, a group of bored people are full of expectations and keep an eye on the progress of the Anilu Golden Mantra project. With such a good situation, it stands to reason that Loya should be happy. But at this moment, no matter how warm the sun hit him, he only felt a chill in his heart. It's been half a month. Robin kicked him out of the room and slept in a separate room for half a month. Old couple, what do you think this is a picture? Talking about it, Loya still hurry up to find the island of the moderate tribe where Saren is located. However, according to the report from the spies, the ethnic group that Sarong belonged to was shattered by an abnormal weather a few years ago. There are not 1 out of 10 remaining clansmen. It is estimated that they are distributed in every corner of the sea. Where do you ask him to find them? Not daring to tell Robin the answer directly, Loya can only hope that the soldiers will be quicker and try to get things done before Robin hears any rumors. At this moment, a footstep sounded from far to near. If it is a familiar subordinate, Loya can tell who it is from his footsteps. But apparently this guy isn't. As soon as he got up, Loya opened his eyes. How is it? Have you found the whereabouts of those giants? Before he could speak, the undead soldier was startled by Loya's reaction. I was stunned for a while, and quickly replied, I'm sorry Lord Loya, I'm not responsible for what you said. Oh, that's it. Hearing this, Loya lay back indifferently and waved his hand. If you have something to say, don't disturb my sleep. Yes. The undead soldier nodded, leaned down and whispered a few words. Then Loya stood up again in an instant, his eyes widened. What? Fire Fist, Ace is going to be executed. On the 3rd of next month. Watching Loya leave in a hurry, the soldier looked left and right, then frowned, and also lay on the lawn. By the way, why does Lord Loya like to sleep here these days? Is it because it's too noisy inside the fort? Thinking of the scene when he went to the residential area to report the situation to Loya, and then was kicked out by the impatient Robin, the undead soldier looked terrified. Will I be silenced? The Great Root, the first half, the capital of 7 waters. Because they were performing a lurking mission, no matter how big things happened in Turtle Island, they still couldn't do anything without Loya's opening. Fortunately, because they didn't leave without permission, Tony and others caught some traces, which triggered the Straw Hats' attack on Judicial Island. Yes. No matter how much Loya has changed, some things will still happen. In the Battle of Judicial Island in the original book, Robin is actually just a fuse. As long as the blueprint of Hades is still in Frankie's stomach, then there is no fuse, and the 7 waters will always be an explosive barrel. Cause and effect. Just relying on the strength of the 2 great commanders to repel Guy and Blackbeard, Loya's power makes the world government prepare for a showdown, and they won't grind their temper with Bingshan. So, following Loya's instructions, Tony and the others who had been lurking in the 7 waters fought against the agents from CP9 and successfully saved the iceberg to prevent him from being captured. However, on their way back, CP0 Feet's master made a sneak attack and ran away while the iceberg was not paying attention. Which line is this? The Straw Hats quit on the spot. Frankie, the benefactor who promised to build a new ship for them, is also the boatman who Luffy is optimistic about and wants to pull him on board, kidnap his senior brother. Isn't it just to fight with our Straw Hats? So, the Battle of Judicial Island came as scheduled. Unexpectedly opened in an unexpected way. Chapter 579, The Battle of Judiciary Island 2. Loya didn't tell them the news of Hades. Because of Ratchet's affairs, Loya couldn't fully trust these former companions. However, even if Loya didn't say it, after this period of lurking, Tony and the others could guess what Loya was plotting. Therefore, the iceberg can't have an accident. The sudden jump out of CP0 is not something the current Straw Hats can handle. Therefore, in this attack on Judicial Island, in addition to the Straw Hats in the original book and Barry from Carrera Shipbuilding Company, there will also be a few strong backups from the Turtle Island camp. Once this group of people fights, no matter whether the world government is still capable of launching the demon-slaying order, after this battle, the Judicial Island will definitely be smashed into ruins. At this moment, just as the Straw Hats and the new CP9 agents are fighting fiercely, Tony and the others have also found the culprit who shamed them, CP0. Bang! The two huge figures collided heavily, with their heads on top of each other, wrestling like bulls. The muscular big man Zulkan was facing Arudo, who was the same size as him. He thought that with the help of the resources of the world government, even if he could not bring down the big man in front of him face to face, he thought about it a few more times. Pretty much the same. But soon, Zulkan was surprised to find that this guy was like a stone in a ditch, smelly and hard. Not to mention falling down, being stuck by him will make you feel disgusting instead. He is an agent secretly cultivated by the Tianlong people. In addition to defensive methods, almost all the skills he has learned are used to kill people. Coupled with a strong natural physique, this makes Zulkan have the power to fight no matter what kind of opponent he encounters, and belongs to the type of comprehensive development. But Arudo is different. In addition to his family's artillery boxing, this guy is all about how to strengthen his defense. As soon as the iron block was opened, Zulkan's perfect finger gun could only make a shallow dent, which was very painful, but it was not an injury. Having followed Loya for so long, he has seen various top-level masters in the world early, and has a clear understanding of his own abilities and a clear follow-up development direction, which makes Aldo's current level of domineering no better than those who have been famous for many years. Difference. If it's just an Aldo, Zulkan, relying on his accomplishments in 6 styles, shave, can run away and change to another opponent if he can't beat him. But they only set off 3 people this time, and Tony's side has 6 people. Even if they are divided, they will have to deal with 2. As soon as he wanted to run and assist the strong executioner, Minged, who was beside Arudo, who was known for his weird and erratic temperament after a big change, he would leave an unforgettable memory for him. This name is not his self-proclaimed name, but the name left on the wanted list by the Navy for what he committed after he went back. That unpredictable 6-style derivative skill made Zulkan unable to catch his trace while he was busy dealing with Aldo. And every time he didn't have time to be distracted, Minged would give him a hard blow. Just like now, seeing his hand being controlled by Aludo, Mingdi's footsteps quickly turned into a black line, jumping out from the corner, and the Halu stone claws in his hand poked forward, in Zuur. A large piece of flesh and blood was taken out of Jin's waist. Seeing this, Zulkan was very sad. It's not that I'm not strong, but that the other party has weapons. The hardness of Hailushi is well known. No matter how strong his domineering is, he cannot completely resist Shanghai Lushi. Not to mention Mingdi's way of using the finger gun, using the assassination claw as a real finger. The killing range is indeed small, but the killing power is extraordinary. Just like what Zuljan encountered, Dina and Buri, and the other 2 Scylla's subordinates were also intercepted by Tony and others. The Jerome brothers that Blee met, the 2 have telepathy. Even if they don't have to think about it, they can always be the master of the other person's situation, and cooperate with the endlessly to get Blee to flee in embarrassment. Dina's side is even worse. A Drake who is getting closer to pervert, a Titan successor who hates the living like an undead, her invincible physical advantage and fruit ability, in the face of 2. Sex, indifference it's useless at all, the attack is more ruthless than the next, and defeat is only a matter of time. On the other hand, in order to save his senior brother, Frankie accidentally made a mistake and was arrested. So for his boatman, Luffy had to fight with CP 9 inches the strongest genius in 800 years, Rob Luki. Yes. Rob Luki didn't fall down. Instead, he mustered his hatred for Loya. With the mechanical arm that Vegapunk made for him, he gained more power than the original. With 2 broken fingers, Lucci's right hand declared GG. As ruthless as he is, he even directly amputated all the remaining arms to ensure that the mechanical arm can exert its maximum strength. The degree of specificity has reached that point. You can refer to the Z with the shredder. Of course I didn't learn to be domineering. Rubber jet machine gun. Relying on the characteristics of his rubber man, Luffy developed second gear, a move that greatly improves his physical fitness, and without a teacher, he learned one of the 6 moves that only the world government has recorded, shaving. JTE machine gun is an upgraded version of the rubber machine gun in the normal state. Its power is incomparable. Every punch can leave a big pit on the hard floor. And the attack frequency is very fast. Often before the potholes are opened, the next punch has already arrived, and the gravel will be buried again. But unfortunately, Rob Lucci is no longer the simple genius and executioner he used to be. He is now an avenger. As a newcomer, Luffy is not in his eyes at all. Snapped, snapped. With 2 crisp sounds, the fierce attack stopped immediately. Luffy's arm was grabbed by Lucci from left to right, and the seafloor stone on the mechanical arm made him lose his strength instantly and collapsed limply to the ground. Just because of you, do you want to be the Pirate King? With a sneer, Lucci waved his hands, like smashing a hammer, and directly pierced Luffy into the ground. Wow! The head hits the ground. Even Luffy, who has the characteristics of rubber, is seriously injured this time. Luffy was lifted up with one hand, and the blood dripping from his forehead blurred Luffy's vision. My goal is, Ice Dragon, Loya, but I don't have the time to play with a little pirate like you. So, say goodbye to your pirate career, Monkey D. Roadfly. The mechanical arm named Smasher grabbed Luffy's head, and the smashing bunt was ready, and he was going to blow his head off in the next second. But at this moment, a figure from far to near, accompanied by a gloomy ghost, deflected the mechanical arm to the side. 3 swords style ghost slash. Once he succeeded, Zoro spun in place like a spinning top, and 3 sharp blades slashed out in succession, forcing Rob Luigi away. Curl your eyebrows. Got it. Sanji, who was a step late, appeared beside Luffy and quickly evacuated from the battlefield. Now is not the time to let the captain insist on glory. The enemy is too powerful, and they are simply not what they can handle at this stage. Want to save him? Find death. Rob Lucci's face turned cold, and the mechanical arm quickly deformed. I saw a muzzle opened in the palm, and powerful energy gathered inside. If Roha was here, he would know that Vegapunk had loaded Kaiabu's laser into the shredder. This kind of laser attack condensed according to the bloodline factor is more dangerous than his previous laser weapons. Puff. After a slight vibration, a golden laser passed by Zoro, hitting Sanji who was carrying Luffy at a speed that he couldn't see at all. Then, boom, boom. Chapter 600 The Battle of Judiciary Island 3. Sanji. Luffy. The other members of the Straw Hats came in a hurry. Gabra and the others were maimed by Loya in the Navy headquarters, and the dead and wounded were dealt with secretly by the world government. The new team members Lucci recruited did not have the power they had. Even if they were given devil fruits before, they were easily dealt with by the Straw Hats. Have you all come? Just sent you on the road together. Lucci didn't expect that his subordinates didn't even solve a single enemy. With a cold face, his cold gaze swept across the Straw Hats and raised his mechanical arm. The Sniper King is here. The golden light just now was seen by Usopp. Sanji and Luffy are now bombed, all thanks to Lucci's mechanical arm. People who are timid and afraid of death often show great courage, Usopp being one such example. He held his slingshot, and before Lucci fired, a homemade gunpowder star hit the barrel that was about to fire with precision. Then, bang! The exit was blocked, and this time the laser exploded directly in the barrel. Although the strong explosion did not tear the mechanical arm to pieces, it also sputtered a series of sparks from its surface. Holding on and not falling, Lucci looked at the somewhat uncontrollable mechanical arm. His face was black and oily. You are courting death. Ah, die, die, help, Sauron. After the big hair Kamui, it was Usopp's routine fear of time. Sauron, who was not far away, twitched the corners of his mouth speechlessly and raised his knife. The enemy's most dangerous attack has been destroyed. In this way, even if he can't defeat him, he must buy time for Luffy and consume the enemy's physical strength as much as possible. Because Zoro knew that after Luffy recovered his vitality, he would definitely come here again. As for the problem that the capable person is restrained by the opponent's Halushi's arm, that's not what he needs to care about. Because their captain is the man who wants to become the Pirate King. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are the 6 faculties of a person. Walking slowly forward, Sauron took off his turban and wrapped it tightly around his head. In addition to good, evil, and peace, each has purification and defilement, which is exactly the 36 troubles in the first life. 36 worries in the first world, 72 worries in the second world, and the third world. Standing not far from Rob Ludge, all of a sudden, 3 swords danced together. 108 troubles. 3 swords flow 108 troubled winds. Clang. The sound of the knife gradually started, and then it returned to calm. Not far away, Rob Lucci finally put down his contemptuous attitude and raised his mechanical arm, flying slash. I underestimate you. The turquoise sword Glojong Kiba danced his claws, like a sea dragon, slashing at Rob Lucci fiercely. The exaggerated flying slash seemed to have life, hovering in the air. Faced with such a powerful attack, Lucci's first reaction was defense. And that's exactly what Sauron needs. Ding! Bang! The mechanical arm, smasher, from the hands of Vegapunk was extremely tough, and even the powerful slash of the swordsman left only a slight trace on the outer metal shell. Lucci suddenly pushed his arm forward, and the knife-light tornado was thrown to the side by heavy bombs, blasting a big hole in the wall. At this moment, a silver light flashed in front of Lucci's eyes, and then a piercing pain came from his chest. 3 swords profound truth 3000 worlds. Nani? Lucci stared at him, and looked down. The slash just now opened a hole across his chest, and a large amount of blood spurted out without money. With 2 big moves in a row, Zoro, who was slightly out of breath, turned around with the knife, and put the weapons together again. I heard that your target is Ice Dragon, Loya. I advise you to stay awake. Combining strikes, 1 knife cut. Seizing an opportunity, Brother Jerome instantly went around to a blind spot in Bully's sight. All 3 will observation hockey, of course not to blind each other's perception. But the Jerome brothers found through statistics that if they attacked from these 2 angles at the same time, the probability of success exceeds 80%. PFF'd. Whoa! The internal organs were scattered all over the place, and Bully blocked the cut-off Izumi from the front and the side, but did not block the rain from the back. The sharpness of Liankuai's sword is combined with armament hockey, which directly smashes the opponent's defense and slashes it in 2 stages. God TM a knife and 2. Are you 2 knives? Before he lost consciousness, Bully was madly complaining in his heart, and then he suddenly remembered that until now he didn't even know who the 2 were brother and who was the brother, only that they seemed to be called Brother Jerome. During the battle, Brother Jerome took a breath while leaning against the wall, then looked at each other, and quickly ran to the other people's positions. Tony has weighed the pros and cons with them. It is about ancient weapons, and no one can be sloppy. However, since they have both solved their opponents, Tony and Drake, who are stronger than them, have already divided Dina into pieces. After all, they are 2 inhuman perverts. Don't expect them to pity the flowers Shiyu. The 2 teams met on the way, and the Jerome brothers turned decisively and went to the last battlefield. At this moment, Zulkin couldn't hold it anymore. There were wounds all over his body, and the blood dripped into small pools on the ground. But Erudo can say very aggrievedly that he did not do this, it was all Minged. This is indeed the case. Zulkin wants to escape. 1 paw. Zulkin distracted. 1 paw. Zul'jin outbreak. Still a paw. Obviously, as long as he was caught, Mingdi's physical fitness couldn't take a punch from him, but relying on the stinky and hard Arudo to contain him. He always walked on the edge of the battlefield, but he didn't give Zulkan a chance. It's hard to see a flaw, but I didn't expect it to be a trap left by Ming deliberately showing off. The man didn't hit, but he was blinded in one eye. When Brother Jerome, Tony and the others arrived, they saw Aldo holding his fist in a daze, looking at the 3 sharp claws emerging from Zulkan's chest. The corners of his mouth twitched in a daze. And Ming, now stepping on Zulkan's broad shoulders, bent down with the golden hook upside down, and sent his claws into his heart. The invisible air film wrapped around the claws exploded, and a slight explosion sounded, cutting off Zuljan's last vitality. 5 stars for technical difficulty. Hey Ming, you're a head-scratcher. It doesn't count. Jumping from Zuljan's body, Ming wiped the blood on the sharp blade expressionlessly, making sure that the link would not affect the battle due to blood infiltration. Okay, since it's all settled, go to Bingshan and Frankie first. Tony, the commander of the trip, said that he was very dissatisfied after being dragged by the woman Dina for a long time with her fruit ability. Loya's request was to avoid an accident with the iceberg. Now that the iceberg and even the younger brother of the iceberg, Frankie, were arrested together, Tony didn't have the time to play with them. The group simply bandaged the wound, and then followed Tony to continue to the Judiciary Island. If possible, none of them want to pin their hopes on the mascot like Perona. Just as Tony and the others were searching around, the position where Lucci and the Straw Hats fought had completely changed. The 3,000 worlds, as the profound meaning of the 3 swords, will exert greater power as Zoro becomes stronger. But now, although Lucci can be severely injured, it is not enough to kill him in one hit. On the contrary, Lucci, relying on the return of his life to forcibly stop the bleeding, defeated Soren's fights like nothing else. In this kind of serious battle between the 2 sides, Nami, Usopp and Chopper can only see a series of dark shadows, and they can't join in at all. But soon, the 2 sides finally stopped. But at this moment, Soren's long cracked snow broke into 2 pieces with a bang. Sauron! How is that possible? Soren's sword. The timid trio huddled together in horror, scared to death. Throwing his hand away, he threw away the broken half of the blade. Rob Lucci moved the shredder and approached Zoro step by step. The sword is the life of the swordsman. The sword is the sword, and the sword is the death. Are you ready to die? At this time, the others discovered that not only was the sword broken, but there was also a hole in Zoro's chest. Chopper, who has medical knowledge, immediately exclaimed, Sauron. Are you okay? Did you squeeze your heart? Of course there is, Chopper. Before the enemy, Zoro was still in the mood to joke, but even if it doesn't, the ending will be similar. Sure enough, that's how I am. Are you finished with your last words? He slowly raised his iron fist, and a huge propulsive force gathered in the mechanical arm. Rob Lucci's eyes narrowed and he punched out. Bang!